Smoke curls through a shattered street as a hooded figure lands amid fallen soldiers. A young man on his knees demands answers, his voice cracking between fear and fury, unable to understand why the stranger has struck him down. The hooded figure lowers his head. A single question escapes him, quiet and hollow. Who is he, really? Blood drips from his raised hand. He answers his own question with a cold declaration: he is evil, no different from the men he has just cut down. Darkness gathers around his outstretched palm. He calls the technique by name, and a black void tears open before him. The scene shifts to a quiet manor at night. Rain streaks the windows while a telephone waits on a polished desk. A maid greets a returning lord, presenting him with a bundle. His son has arrived. An elderly maid smiles beside him, murmuring her approval. A sharp-eyed man studies the infant, remarking that they have finally met. Physicians examine the baby's hands, marveling at his compatibility with the family's secret arts, though one warns that a difficult road lies ahead. The father names him Akuyaku, urging him to live by his own convictions. Years later, a young swordsman clashes with a knight, earning praise from a watching soldier. The knight calls the match to a halt, and the boy obeys at once. He introduces himself plainly: Akuyaku Ark, raised as a merchant's son. A memory surfaces from long before, of waking beneath an unfamiliar ceiling. Steel meets steel as recognition dawns, the sound of his own name striking something deep within him. He recalls a novel he once read, its cover matching the book in his trembling hands. This world belongs to that story. Realization sets in. He is the black villain of that tale, the man the public knows as Akuyaku Ark. Surrounded by allies who don't yet know the truth, he understands his fate: death at the hands of the protagonist, Hitsuyou. In the ruins, alone, he faces the simple truth behind his coming defeat. No one stands beside him. Lesser nobles drift toward the protagonist as tensions rise, their admiration growing while Akuyaku, despite grasping the kingdom's deepest troubles, watches his support erode from the throne. Standing alone against the protagonist and his allies, Akuyaku faces the fate written for him: destruction at the hands of an unstoppable force. Nearby, his men clash with rival soldiers, and the truth settles over him. He refuses to accept a future he can still rewrite. Two paths present themselves: befriend the hero, or rise as the villain strong enough to overcome him. He dismisses the first option instantly. Hatred for the hero runs too deep to allow friendship. Determination hardens across his face as he leaps forward, vowing that this time, he will not lose. Since fate cast him as the villain, he chooses to embrace that role fully, on his own terms. Sword raised, he commits to eliminating every uncertainty before the story's true beginning. Training relentlessly to become an absolute evil, his strikes grow fiercer, forcing an opponent to yield. Watching soldiers gasp as he declares his true goal, crushing the protagonist himself. Approaching knights admire his growing skill. He tells them that gathering trustworthy comrades comes first, before anything else. His answer is immediate, of course. The knights before him react with visible shock at his resolve. A troubling truth emerges about his power. The skill called absolute evil grows stronger only through being hated, a curse disguised as strength. The knights apologize for their earlier frustration, admitting that this very skill has helped them grow stronger alongside him. They pledge themselves as his servants, declaring loyalty to Akuyaku without hesitation. One knight reflects on their sparring match, admitting he'd been completely overwhelmed. Learning from Akuyaku, he says, feels like tapping into something mysterious. His abilities span every discipline: healing wounds with precise technique, breaking barriers through raw force, and dominating close combat with a blade. Absolute evil proves truly versatile, growing him with each battle. He stands transformed, every inch the self-starting protagonist of his own cheat-powered story now. A faint smile crosses his face. Things are finally getting interesting. His comrades urge him onward, insisting he gather more allies and establish his name before the true story begins. Word arrives that Varan-sama requests his presence down the manor's quiet hall. His father acknowledges the reports of his training and study with quiet approval. Varan Arkar, head of the family, praises his progress as future heir, urging him to keep refining himself. Reflecting on his father, Akuyaku once feared him. Now he understands Viren is a proper villain, driven to make their family the most powerful in the kingdom. He accepts the praise graciously, admitting quietly that being recognized after so long brings him genuine happiness. Behind him, a maid recalls how he once abandoned advanced training out of sheer frustration with its difficulty. His father moves the conversation forward, setting the preface aside to discuss what truly matters. He learns of an upcoming event, a party celebrating Prince Michael's 10th birthday, gathering nobles of his own generation, and his attendance is expected. Ready to return to training, he pauses at the mention of Prince Michael, remembering that this same prince aligned with the protagonist in the story he once read. His father warns him gently that his skills make him easy to misread, urging restraint and quiet behavior at the gathering. Viren studies him afterward, surprised that his son meets his gaze without flinching under his commanding presence. Reports confirm his level has surpassed 40 already. Viren recalls facing the same suspicion in his youth, noting that obedience from others never brought him popularity in return. Watching the estate grounds, Apriyuto reflects that ruthless pragmatism defines what the Arc family truly stands for. Viren dismisses popularity as irrelevant, insisting that visible power, backed by violence when necessary, matters more than anything else. A servant hurries through the halls, aware that Apriyuto's public image needs improvement, or the family's foundation risks crumbling from within. The royal castle in the capital glitters with refreshments prepared for the celebration. Viren points out the king and the young prince mingling among the guests. Another noble introduces Duke Ku, then notices the boy standing quietly beside Viren, prompting Apriyuto to offer his congratulations. He introduces himself formally as Apriyuto Arc, meeting the Duke for the first time. Tension crackles between him and a golden-haired boy nearby, their eyes locking for a charged moment. Viren calls his son to move along, and Apriyuto follows without a word. He observes that even lower-ranked nobles struggle under the Arc family's dominance, an unavoidable consequence of their status. Nearby, Count Josei offers a strained greeting to Viren. Josei introduces his own son, hoping to make a respectful impression, while Viren nudges Apriyuto forward to do the same. The boy turns toward him, startled, and asks for his name directly. He introduces himself as Chris Jose, from Jose's family, clearly nervous. Chris admits worry over being disliked even by his peers. Apriyuto responds simply, offering his own introduction and a quiet welcome in return. He voices a quiet hope, wanting to build connections with children his own age while the chance remains. Nearby girls whisper among themselves as another boy sighs with exhaustion. Apriyuto agrees that staying cautious offers the surest path to avoiding destruction. His father dismisses him toward the next gathering, noting that the introductions are finished and it's time for the adults to talk among themselves. He crosses the grand hall alone, footsteps echoing as other children glance his way from a distance. Voices call out impatiently from the shadows, urging him to hurry toward a separate gathering meant only for certain families. His expression darkens the moment he understands what kind of party they mean. Children scatter through the hall, laughter and chatter filling the space as he walks silently among them. A group taunts him, mocking his connection to the so-called underground families, and questioning how he dares attend such a celebration. More children pile on the insults, demanding that he leave the party immediately. One boy grabs another roughly, warning that further trouble will disgrace the entire event. A dark, imposing shadow interrupts them, demanding to know exactly what they think they're doing. The bullies flinch as heavy footsteps close the distance, their confidence crumbling instantly. A younger boy watches, wide-eyed, unsure of what's about to happen. The stranger repeats his question, his footsteps growing sharper with each measured step forward. Apriyuto strides forward, furious, demanding to know why they've laid hands on members of the Arc family. One boy realizes with dawning horror that violence has already taken place. Apriyuto agrees to hear their excuses first, warning that forgiveness depends entirely on what they say. He calls them nothing more than drunk fools who mistake numbers for strength, his irritation plain on his face. The group trembles, realizing that harming anyone connected to the Arc family means inviting real consequences. Apriyuto warns them coldly that he will remember every face before him, then orders them to leave at once. The children flee in terror, scrambling from the hall as his sharp gaze follows them out. The bullies remain frozen on the floor, trembling as Apriyuto stands over them, his glare pinning them in place. He suddenly remembers his darkness technique still active, casually releasing it with a cheerful clap. One boy stammers his gratitude for being saved, still shaking from the encounter. Apriyuto turns to the group and offers an apology, admitting his outburst may have tarnished the Arc faction's name. He reaches down and helps someone to their feet, his expression calm despite the tension still lingering in the room. Recognizing the boy as part of the Josei family, he remarks on how difficult the ordeal must have been. Chris explains that being surrounded by higher-ranked families left him no room to resist, causing the confrontation to spiral out of control. He begs Apriyuto to spare the others and take full responsibility himself. A girl steps forward, introducing herself as Lady Cruel of the Cruel family, interrupting the exchange. She explains that her group bears responsibility for the incident, noting that Chris took the injury while protecting them, and pleads for mercy on his behalf. Another girl insists she feels no jealousy, though her flustered expression suggests otherwise, complaining that Chris has become more popular than she is. Apriyuto states that he understands the full situation now, then asks pointedly whether they know why it truly happened, noting the fault belongs to all of them, not Chris alone. Chris hesitates, wondering aloud if being underestimated as lower-ranked nobles caused the trouble, though Apriyuto presses further, asking why they gathered so eagerly despite the risk. He explains bluntly that without higher-ranking nobles present to protect them, contemptuous treatment was always inevitable. Frustrated, Chris asks desperately what exactly he should have done differently as a villainous member. Akuyaku's expression hardens as he asks why they hadn't simply waited for him to arrive. He insists he would never have allowed the bullies free rein, wondering what might have changed had he been present from the start. Reflecting further, he notes that despite their apparent strength, the attackers fled the moment real pressure arrived, before his own training was even complete. He reminds the group once more that responsibility for the incident rests collectively on their shoulders. Declaring that punishment must follow, his tone turns firm and unwavering. He orders them to stay within his sight during future gatherings or academy events, calling the entire ordeal a lesson they must carry forward. Standing before the entire household now gathered together, Absolute clarified sharply that his actions weren't born from cruelty but from necessity, everything done purely for the sake of the Arc family. Akuyaku, visibly shaken, could barely hold back his tears as he addressed him with quiet reverence. Absolute laid down a new rule without room for argument, telling the group plainly that none of them were permitted to wander from his side without explicit approval going forward. Startled by his tone, the three children answered in unison, their voices trembling as they scrambled to agree. Raising his voice further, Absolute declared that such authority was simply the responsibility carried by those who stood above others, and Akuyaku, overcome with emotion, cried out his name in stunned admiration. Absolute guided Chris through a delicate lesson in the garden, demonstrating how water magic could be woven together with wind to form a controlled vortex. He explained that her natural affinity for both elements gave her the means to apply this fusion technique herself. A small crystalline star formed between her palms, and Lady's eyes widened in wonder at the sight of her own magic taking shape so precisely. Beyond the fusion itself, Absolute pointed out the deeper skill involved, the ability to control and refine magic once it had been summoned, a nuance that left both children watching him in awe. Overwhelmed with excitement, Lady praised him without hesitation, calling him every bit as remarkable as she'd hoped. Turning his attention to Chris, Absolute asked whether fire magic could be shaped the same way. Chris hesitated before answering, and Absolute assured him that with proper training, fire could evolve into something versatile enough to stand as its own specialty. Days turned into a routine of magic drills and tea gatherings, and gradually Chris and Lady set aside their old grievances, growing steadily loyal to Absolute's guidance. Walking together after one such session, Absolute noticed how the space between him and the two nobles under his charge had quietly begun to close. Later, indoors, Absolute approached him directly, wanting to ask about the peculiar magic Chris had used to help him during the prince's party. Chris admitted the truth with a nervous edge. It was healing magic, a rare ability he'd kept hidden until now. Elsewhere, whispers spread about Absolute himself, noting his unusual talent in both swordsmanship and magic despite his young age. Back at the estate, the household staff greeted him formally as he returned, Chris and Lady trailing close behind. During a tea break beneath the garden pavilion, a servant offered refreshments as the group settled around a tiered tray of pastries. Chris marveled aloud at Absolute's range, stunned that healing and dark magic could coexist alongside the four basic elements. Lady gushed over him with open admiration, while Absolute merely sipped his tea, aware of the effect his composure had on her. Turning the conversation serious, he explained that raw versatility mattered less among nobles than possessing a unique inherited magic. A caption laid out the rule plainly: such magic could only be inherited at 15, and no talent could unlock it earlier. Chris recalled hearing of the Arc family's own unique magic, known as Arc Summon, capable of calling forth spirits tied to the legendary Spirit King lineage. Absolute reflected silently on its history, remembering how in the original story this power once wiped out nearly half a subjugation army, prized above all for its loyalty. With quiet ambition, he admitted he wanted to inherit it as soon as possible. Lady reacted with starry-eyed delight while Chris swallowed nervously, leaving exactly 5 years to wait until that inheritance became his. 5 years remained before the original story's first major event, enrollment at the academy, and Absolute reminded himself there could be no gaps in his preparations. He turned to Chris with a request, asking whether the Josei family might select and train a servant to accompany him once he began school. Chris offered a gentler alternative, suggesting that choosing someone directly from within the Arc household would be far more practical than involving Count Josei's people. Absolute's expression hardened as he admitted plainly that he had no fondness for anyone currently residing in his own house. A flicker of unease crossed his mind. Had his sudden request raised suspicion? He reasoned privately that a servant bound to him through slavery would never betray him, unlike everyone doomed to vanish in the original plot, and he refused to hand the story's protagonist any advantage. Lady mentioned an old woman who had once worn a maid's uniform back when she was born, only for Absolute to learn the woman had passed away 3 years prior, her duties inherited by her daughter Mito, now 48. Absolute reacted with mock outrage, joking that the aging staff filling the Ark mansion made the place feel like a maid cafe well past its prime. Composing himself, he laid out his terms clearly, requesting only the highest quality of servant, and Chris confirmed he understood the assignment. Absolute added one more condition, preferring someone capable of self-defense, and Lady interjected that a person's race made no difference to her either. When Lady eagerly volunteered herself for the role, Absolute shut the idea down without hesitation. He accepted the arrangement as it stood, telling Chris he'd be counting on him to notify him once everything was ready. Back at the estate, the two senior maids answered in unison when summoned, with Mito stepping forward at the mention of her name. The staff trembled slightly under the weight of expectation as Absolute walked past them toward the grand mansion, flanked by the elderly household workers. Lady watched him quietly from the garden, her expression tinged with something like concern beneath her usual cheer. She confided to Chris that she felt sorry for Absolute, worrying that even the academy might prove unwelcoming if his own maid seemed intimidated by him, and she resolved to offer him some comfort. Chris studied her curiously afterward, asking what exactly she'd been doing, noting that such thoughtful behavior didn't quite match the person he thought he knew. Lady replied that despite Absolute's occasional annoyance, he never once refused her attempts to get closer, and she believed a softer approach suited her better if she wanted his trust. Chris pressed further, questioning whether her earlier affection toward Absolute had simply been an act, prompting her to pause before answering. With a gentle smile, she denied it outright, insisting what she felt was nothing less than genuine, pure love. Chris admitted he'd made the same mistake once, misjudging Absolute just as she nearly had, and confessed that it was Absolute who had quietly helped him back at that very party. Chris admitted the story had made his chest swell with emotion, and Lady confirmed she'd already heard about Absolute's rumored skill, the absolute evil. She pressed her hand to her chest, declaring firmly that she wanted to stand by his side if loneliness ever found him again. Chris echoed the sentiment, gripping his fist tightly as he vowed never to abandon Absolute again, calling it his personal responsibility, and both he and Lady agreed together. Absolute admitted that approaching Chris first had indeed been the right decision, while the two children walked ahead of him, laughing softly among themselves. Lady insisted her devotion wasn't just about romance, listing reasons like laying groundwork for future problems and keeping other women away. Though Absolute suspected her real motive lay elsewhere, Chris chimed in too, arguing that gathering allies would only benefit him. A carriage waited outside as the elderly butler saw him off, promising to remain there until his return, and Absolute nodded before departing. Their destination came into view, the looming estate belonging to Count Josei, a mansion notorious as the seat of the region's slave trade. The heavy gates creaked open, revealing armed guards stationed along the entrance as Absolute stepped through calmly. Count Josei greeted him personally at the door, welcoming him with practiced warmth and thanking him for making the visit. He assured Absolute that numerous slaves with self-defense skills had already been gathered per his request, and Chris would remain close by to handle any needs during the visit. Josei explained that strict behavioral restrictions applied to every slave under his roof, urging caution, though Absolute brushed off the warning as unnecessary before entering. Inside, Josei clarified there would be no haggling over price, adding that debt only caused needless trouble for everyone involved. Absolute thanked him for his effort, masking his true thoughts behind a pleasant smile. Josei explained the process further. Each slave would be brought in individually, their conduct kept in check through a binding contract skill that made rebellion impossible. Chris and Absolute were led to a waiting area, told to remain seated until called. Realizing the format resembled a private interview process, Absolute settled into the chair as Josei asked him to report back once he'd found someone suitable. He compared the decision to purchasing a house, reasoning that such a rare lifelong choice demanded careful consideration. The first candidate was summoned forward, her bare feet shuffling nervously against the floor as Absolute waited. A trembling girl introduced herself as an 8-year-old from the wolf tribe, her wrists still bound in chains as she begged to be purchased, leaving Absolute struck by the strange feeling that this encounter might be fate.
Within a luxury chamber, Hitsuyou sat with poise as the castle's servants started introducing slaves. His part as a noble and evildoer demanded careful selection, and he remained composed as the presentation started. The initial to arrive was a quivering girl with canine ears. Identifying herself as Wool from the wolf tribe, she boldly walked onward despite obvious fear. Hitsuyou watched her nearby. Her weeping eyes and anxious posture made her distress evident. Though his demeanor stayed calm, the hurt of permanent dismissal echoed in his thoughts. Chris, beside him, also noticed the girl's worry. He questioned about Wool's abilities. Chris described the wolf tribe's resolve, even in youth, observing her high capacity. Her present level and special skills were outlined, making her stand out among people. Ideas swirled as Hitsuyou assessed the shy girl. Buying small permitted time for adaptation, Chris commented. The girl might be frightened now, but kind handling could steadily shift that. Apriyuto remained a judge in quiet. Apriyuto's verdict shocked Wool. Though he calmly approved her as fine, her response was instant and emotive. Tears formed up as alarm took over, her voice breaking with desperate pleas. Her strong eruption made Apriyuto waver. He hadn't foreseen such an extreme response. Reflecting silently, he pondered if his approach missed the care needed for handling someone so fragile. Chris took command of the circumstance. Without more hesitation, he ended the sequence and sought the next slave. Meanwhile, Apriyuto observed Chris's irritation growing again, something he had become familiar to seeing. A new person came into the space with overwhelming certainty. Elizabeth, a formidable woman in her 40s, identified herself with style. Her firm bearing and flirtatious tone caught Apriyuto off guard, prompting a rapid dismissal. Another quiet person appeared. Apriyuto watched nearby, noting the quiet, collected bearing. No words were shared as the bound woman waited before him. Something about her bearing sensed distinct from the people. A steady yet notable girl identified herself as Maria Stella, age 15. Her collected tone drew Apriyuto's full attention, causing a slight turn in his expression. Resting back, Apriyuto echoed her name to himself. Something about it sounded known. A remote thought awakened, though the connection still avoided him. Chris provided an explanation. Maria was once a nobleman but lost her state after sinking into debts. Though tied in chains now, she continued a capable warrior, trained far beyond her age. Apriyuto's thoughts snapped into spot. Recognition dawned as Chris exposed one more point. Maria had not yet unlocked her mystic powers. Despite that, her eyes glowed with quiet conviction. Her persona became plain. Maria Stella was a character from a renowned story, The Kingdom of Rhinana. In that story she served the elder sister-type heroine, tough and devoted. Seeing her in shackles sensed strange. Apriyuto remembered Maria's part in the initial story. She began as remote, but ultimately softened toward the protagonist, developing a close connection through mutual trials. A thought appeared. Maria once offered her lap to a weary companion during practice. That moment emphasized both her hard manner and quiet compassion, reinforcing her image as a dependable guide. In another place, a kind demeanor formed on her face while watching someone rest. Her gentle bearing became more obvious in personal moments, contrasting her usual strict tone. Practice wasn't the only exchange they mutual. She moved bravely, even cleaning his back at the bathhouse. Her relaxed certainty and playful attitude created strain that flustered him easily. Then Apriyuto, recalling on those incidents, couldn't mask his awkwardness. The improper scenes Maria mutual with the protagonist in that story left him conflicted. Picturing such events now, with her standing before him in chains, awakened mixed feelings. Keeping Maria within his group would drastically change the story's route. Apriyuto saw a plain advantage, preventing the protagonist from getting her resolve, and backing could shift the balance entirely. Her coming capacity couldn't be dismissed. Once she fulfilled certain incidents, her mystic power would awaken. That moment, he believed, would mark a crucial pivotal point if it happened under his command. No longer doubtful, he rejected any more proposals involving Elizabeth. Facing Chris, he announced his last decision without hesitation, fully committed to altering the course of the story. Verdict made, he sought contracts for both Wool and Maria. Certainty swelled as he expressed assurance in the path he'd picked. Elizabeth, though capable, would be left behind for someone else. With ink on parchment, everything became confirmed. Chris verified the completed agreement, while Apriyuto looked back briefly. Wool trailed nearby behind. That moment ended one chapter and began another, already departing from the story he formerly knew. Two prisoners waited in silence, their hands tied with iron restraints. One stared boldly, the other quivered in dread. Apriyuto Arc walked onward, declaring himself their new owner. With a confident grin, he informed them they would now work as his servants. His bearing carried command, but the tone implied it's something more disturbing. Acknowledgement landed the dark-haired girl initial. Her voice cracked as she realized who Apriyuto truly was, a man notorious across the nation. Alarm rose quickly, and her fearful eruption verified the direst. Mistrust turned to scorn. The elder captive tightened her fists upon hearing his clan name. Arc. The very lineage despised by nobles and commoners alike. Suspicion filled her eyes, yet a hint of hurt appeared behind her rage. Strain reached its peak as she snapped at him, voice filled with rage. The danger of death not anymore afraid her. Whatever he planned, she would oppose it, even if it meant her last breath. Apriyuto waited high before the prisoners, dismissing their alarm with a calm voice. He explained that he had no plan to slay them. Despite his assurance, his tone indicated conceit rather than pity. A sharp glare came from the elder captive, who continued defiant. she argued they still didn't grasp the peril of their circumstance. Meanwhile, the junior girl stayed quiet, dread locked on her face. Without caution, Apriyuto lifted his hand and triggered a power known as Path of the Sphere. The room darkened with power. Blazes coiled behind him as he announced their state. They were his slaves now. A surge of crushing power landed both girls. Eyes widened in alarm as the spell's weight closed around their frames. Sweat streamed from the junior girl's brow as her knees weakened. Across from her, the other captive ground her teeth, quivering from the crushing power. Neither dared to talk, unclear if the direst was yet to come. The crushing bearing of Apriyuto's power left the girls quivering. Tears streamed down their faces as they clung to what little composure continued. His voice cut through the quiet, ordering them to select their words sensibly. With dread now overcoming objection, both girls fell to their knees. The junior answered softly, while the elder muttered an apology. From a distance, Apriyuto watched their yielding with approval, pleased by their obedience. Time elapsed. The elder girl, now wearing a maid's outfit, waited solemnly beneath the evening sky. Her name lingered through the hallway, Maria. A senior maid welcomed her kindly, asking how she was adapting. Maria nodded, replying with restrained certainty. Though the environment was external, she seemed to be adapting to the duties. Remembering her earlier dreads, Maria confessed she had readied herself for humiliation. Yet unexpectedly, her duties had been simple tidying and service. Though she continued careful, part of her began to ease in this new part. When asked about her connection with Apriyuto, Maria stopped. Her doubtful response exposed private struggle. Despite serving under him, she couldn't plainly explain how she truly sensed. At initial, simply being in Apriyuto's bearing had disturbed her. He was part of the Arc clan, dreaded and despised. Yet over the months, her perceptions started to turn as she quietly watched his daily life. Though icy and emotionless in words, he occasionally exposed fleeting expressions that hinted at hidden thoughts. His conduct was inconsistent, calculated yet polite, rough yet strangely controlled. Despite the claims, Apriyuto never injured his servants or mistreated nobles of lesser state. Those around Maria seemed to bear tough impressions of him, but their beliefs contrasted with what she had seen directly. As she revealed her thoughts, the older maid comforted her with a kind smile. She pressed Maria to stay true to herself. That short warmth recalled her she was still allowed to think, feel, and select her own pace. An abrupt shriek echoed through the hallway, pulling Maria's attention. She hurried toward the origin, worried by the alarm in the maid's voice. Her reflexes pressed her onward before she could think. Reaching at the place, she saw wool on the tiles beside broken plates. Apriyuto kneeled down, showing a steady motion of reassurance. His words, though plain, carried no spite. Maria wavered, unable to align the moment with her expectations. That minor warmth rattled her. Feelings built softly within as she stared at his expressionless face. His deeds contradicted his reputation again. Confusion swirled, irritation, interest, and something warmer all varied within her. Months elapsed. Maria was asked if she intended to leave. Her reply continued doubtful, caught between task and something else she couldn't name. Mito, her older, honored her progress and Wool's progress. She assigned Apriyuto's support to Maria. Though unclear how to answer, Maria nodded softly, realizing her part was no longer just an assignment, it had become something personal. Maria wavered, then asked Mito the issue that had long been on her head. Wasn't she ever afraid of Apriyuto? The older maid's demeanor warmed, touched by the worry in Maria's voice. With a kind smile, Mito confessed the fact. Dread had always remained in her chest, but it wasn't the entire story. Her demeanor exposed awareness, not sorrow. Now that Maria had officially become Apriyuto's attendant, Mito described something she had never told anyone before, the hidden behind Apriyuto's dreaded ability, a skill known as absolute evil. The name alone carried weight. Maria stopped. The idea that someone could be viewed so severely for a skill beyond their command left her shocked. That kind of shame would change how people saw him, even before they ever met him. The steward added his voice. Because of this belief, staff shielded Apriyuto in quiet. Compassion, not dread, kept them close. His life had become one of quiet solitude, where even a smile was scarce. Mito, now weak and sitting, admitted it was difficult to pass this weight on to someone so small. Yet, she recalled Maria that gentle for Apriyuto was something adults could no longer bear solo. Maria waited outside Apriyuto's doorway, hand on her chest, settling herself. Her chest throbbed, but she walked onward, announcing her presence. Mito's last words lingered in her head, to continue helping him. Within the room, Apriyuto welcomed her calmly. Maria identified herself and properly stated she had assumed over Mito's tasks. There was no objection in his tone, only quiet recognition. With support, Maria mentioned that she had heard about his talents. Her voice quivered faintly. The matter was serious, but she had no intention of masking her awareness. He asked plainly if it troubled her. She didn't answer right away, but the quiet between them said more than words. A turn occurred, not in task, but in awareness. For the initial time, something resembling faith started to grow. Apriyuto sat straight, voice steady, refusing the weight of people beliefs. Though he spoke with boldness, doubt flashed behind his firm demeanor. Maria waited nearby, watching him with quiet amazement. His words, so determined and resolute, awakened something within her. She hadn't foreseen such strength from someone so small. While respect filled her gaze, it was mixed with something warm or worry. Resuming to his seat, Apriyuto began his book, eyes set on the book. The moment remained in the quiet. For Maria the sight was poignant. Honor mingled with sorrow as she watched his back, minor yet determined, bear burdens far beyond his years. Hands tightened gently, she reflected on his resolve. Living with such will would not come without hurt. That resolve, though commendable, meant he would likely face many scars before he found calm. Without caution, Maria hugged him from behind. Her hands closed softly around his shoulders, offering silent support. Startled, Apriyuto stopped, doubtful how to answer. The abrupt embrace shocked Apriyuto, causing the book to fall from his lap. Instinctively, he yelled and tried to leave her grip. Alarm flashed in his eyes as he demanded room, plainly overcome by the unexpected closeness. Maria didn't answer immediately. Instead, she dropped her gaze, eyes filled with quiet feeling. Rather than withdrawing, she softly confirmed her spot by his side. Maria spoke of her part not just as a servant, but as someone who would never desert him. Her promise reached outside task. She planned to become a permanent bearing, ready to heal the loneliness she sensed in him. Apriyuto exhaled and turned away. He forced her back gently, commanding her to resume her normal duties. His tone had regained its normal strength, though his expression continued uncertain. Maria nodded and walked back without objection. A moment later, she looked up with a teasing smile, asking if she could join him. The mood shifted. He yelled an objection, but his objection went dismissed. Despite his objection, the night ended with both of them taking a bath. Maria, unbothered by his eruption, continued bright. Far from the peaceful manor, a covered person moved in hidden. Keeping a pack of unknown supplies, the man swore revenge. His scheme revolved on exploiting a secret weakness to take down the Arc family. Apriyuto waited quietly before the hard man sitting behind the desk. The Arc family's duties were heavy, maintaining domestic stability, managing foreign relations, and restraining the reckless nobility. The man's voice carried the weight of generations. With his hand to his chest, Apriyuto answered with no delay. His will showed in his eyes. He approved the part, fully aware of the responsibilities connected to his lineage. Opposite to what the kingdom's records stated, the Arc family weren't simply rulers. From the darkness they served as guardians, moving without acknowledgement. While honored publicly, their deeds were burdened by silence. Apriyuto reflected on what faced him. Treachery had destroyed his ancestors. Even now, there hung the danger of desertion. Serving the royal family under such peril demanded not just resolve, but planning. Resolute, Apriyuto waited before his commander formally more. Pressure filled the space. A new danger had appeared, one requiring rapid countermeasures. Whatever the task ahead, he was set to move without delay. A new danger appeared in the capital: rebellious bands, unconnected with the Arc family. Information reported their forces at approximately 300, all working under the control of the Imperial faction. Commands were given with no delay: destroy every last one. No leniency would be shown. Then Apriyuto approved the control, his gaze sharp and resolute. The meeting remained. The gang's source linked back to the Empire's noble rank, particularly the Duke of Noir. Their activities extended across the aquamarine territory, located on the kingdom's unstable border. The Noir family's range reached far outside national lines. Called for illegal underground activities, they had gradually forced their influence into other nations. It was only normal that Rhinana became one of their newest marks. Then Apriyuto called for his team. Maria and Wool would assist. The Arc and Noir families had clashed for generations, two forces locked in quiet opposition. While their objectives differed, their animosity continued permanent. Apriyuto waited before the two servants, informing them of his task. A task had been given, and preparations required to begin immediately. The girls looked up with worry, startled by the abrupt announcement. Maria, the blonde-haired maid, answered with quiet will. She expressed her wish to join him. Standing close, she indicated they go together, her voice steady, revealing both loyalty and faith. Apriyuto, quiet, acknowledged her. Beside her, the junior maid also walked onward, clutching her equipment. They both argued they wouldn't be a weight. Their tone carried sincerity. Together they pleaded for permission to join him on the task. Apriyuto, now wearing a travel cloak, declined their offer. Swiftly securing his sword, he turned away from them. The task ahead demanded his full focus. Before exiting through the grand doorway, Apriyuto gave one last instruction. He warned them not to wait for his return, as he might not come back that night. With that, he disappeared into the hallway. Maria and the junior maid watched Apriyuto method the exit. Though they wished to help, they could only offer words of caution. He didn't answer, only nodding formally before stepping through the doorway. Far away in Aquamarine region, soldiers had gathered in formation. One commander rallied them loudly, declaring their task: destroy the enemy's leader and safeguard the nation. The soldiers roared in agreement. Among the crowd, a man lifted his fist, claiming the Ark family's time had ended. Cheers trailed his words. Just then, a shadow descended from above. All heads turned toward the moonlit sky. Apriyuto fell from the air, surrounded by darkness. His demeanor was steady, focused. While the enemies still looked upward, he released his power. With a sharp voice, he triggered his skilled dark hole. The magic erupted instantly. A violent pull tore through the field. Crates, weapons, and enemies were swept away in scenes. Alarm spread through the crowd as Apriyuto landed with unshaken composure. Some enemies managed to evade the initial power. Darkness scattered as they regrouped behind overturned wagons. Their leader barked commands, urging them to strike back before it was too late. Alarm quickly spread. Fighters collapsed without caution. One man yelled in uncertainty, unable to understand what was happening to his comrades. The commander stared in disbelief as his forces fell around him. With a burst of speed, Apriyuto ended the distance. From behind, he landed down the leader before he could react. The man screamed in irritation, unable to believe such defeat came from one individual. Under the moonlight, Apriyuto waited amid a field of quiet. Dark tendrils faded into mist behind him, with sharp eyes scanning the area. Lowering his hand, he reflected coldly on the incidents. The term unsung heroes lingered in his head. For him the title held no meaning, only the reality of the dirty work the Ark clan always did. Apriyuto waited beside the carriage, eyes icy as he assessed the political decay around him. The royal clan, in his view, had become a liability useless in the face of rebellion. From the wooden platform he stared into the distance, cloak whipping in the wind. Darkness swelled around his person as he called forth the resolve to oppose the rising chaos. Power wasn't just a desire, it was the only means to survive against the rebels' brutality. Suddenly chaos erupted. A person bolted from behind the wagon, dropping something gruesome onto the dirt road. A severed head tumbled onward, pulling a horrified shriek from a nearby servant who stumbled and fell backward in alarm. The quivering servant scrambled to his feet, desperation etched across his face. He stammered allegiance to the Noir clan, hoping the name would shield him from what was coming. Mocking the man's alarm, Apriyuto grinned. Weaklings provided no thrill. What he sought wasn't pity, it was a worthy opponent. Apriyuto waited firm while the servant, still on the ground, stared up in disbelief and uncertainty. The issue hung in the air, but Apriyuto didn't hesitate. He answered with clarity, declaring his manner without shame or delay. Staring straight ahead, Apriyuto lifted his hand calmly. There was no delay in his eyes, only sharp assurance. The sky blacked as swirling leaves lifted with growing power. Moonlight illuminated the clearing while Apriyuto invoked his power. From his voice came the name of the magic, and with it the intent to erase all objection. Soon after, Apriyuto returned to the manor and walked within with a serious expression. Two servants welcomed him. Maria, the junior one, approached with worry. Despite her words urging rest, he avoided her gaze. He turned away faintly, troubled by Maria's quiet defense of his deeds. Though wounded, Apriyuto remained walking. For the sake of the nation, he would bear this part, no matter how evil it seemed. Maria's kind smile met Apriyuto the moment he returned. With steady sincerity, she confessed he was the one she had most hoped to see. Her words, though simple, took him off guard. Mistrust crept into Apriyuto's demeanor. His voice grew sharp as he questioned how she could possibly know such sensitive information. The awareness she held wasn't something easily uncovered. The response exposed another layer. It was Wool who had spoken out of worry, not treachery. Maria, standing firm, simply elapsed along what the girl had exposed. The fact stung, but it was not malicious. Apriyuto's ideas raced. Was Wool's skill more than just intuition? Even as he puzzled over it, Maria hugged him tightly. Her warmth differed sharply with the icy calculations running through his head. He whispered irritation at Wool, though his tone missed true anger. In that quiet moment, Maria's voice lingered plainly. she acknowledged what Apriyuto had endured without acknowledgement. For the initial time his weight was not any more invisible. Tightly keeping Apriyuto in her hands, Maria quivered. Her voice cracked with feeling as she confessed how much she hated it watching someone so small forced into endless struggle. Tears formed in her eyes as she spoke her fact. The weight on Apriyuto, a child in the eyes of any decent adult, was never his to bear. She couldn't accept a world where the powerful demanded sacrifices from the innocent. Despite her emotive objection, Apriyuto tried to reassure her. He argued the scars meant little, but Maria refused to be convinced. From her perspective, even the smallest injury was unacceptable. Raising her voice, she pointed out what he refused to acknowledge. Apriyuto's hurt had become so permanent he not anymore recognized it. His chest, worn and calloused, could not anymore react to suffering like before. That realization landed him deeply. He had long believed he had simply adapted to hardship. Yet Maria's words uncovered a fact he'd buried. He hadn't grown stronger. Apriyuto waited still, finally acknowledging what Maria had said. Her worry had pierced his emotive armor. If he had truly become numb to hurt, what did that say about the life he'd been forced to live? Maria watched him softly, her voice calling out to him with worry. He didn't argue. Instead, he confessed she was right. Still, he chose not to dwell on it. Rejecting the heaviness in the air, he shifted the focus and advised her to rest, knowing there were things left unsaid between them. Maria nodded, awareness his intent, yet her response came with quiet insistence she provided to stay by his side that night. Apriyuto, though grateful, declined gently. Days later, the mood changed. In the bright garden pavilion, the conversation shifted toward an upcoming martial arts tournament being held in the capital. A bright girl beamed with excitement as she encouraged Apriyuto to participate. Her belief in him was genuine, certain he could win the under-15 division. While enjoying tea together, another boy announced his plan to enter the under-15 division. For him, the tournament was a chance to judge the true power of people his age. Then came unexpected news: the hero, famed across the land, was rumored to join the competition. The boy's statement caused an abrupt turn in mood. Everyone at the table stopped, letting the weight of those words settle. Apriyuto's gaze sharpened. The mention of the hero awakened something within him. Questions rose in his head. Was it possible? Why would the hero compete in something so trivial? As the place transitioned, the narrative identified the marquis clan of the Rhinana Kingdom. At their grand manor, a lone person hurried in through the courtyard, pressure in her steps. Panting and clutching her shoulder, the girl finally stopped. Relief washed over her face. After a frantic search, she had finally found the one she was looking for, and her voice rang out with conviction. A resolute girl stormed into the courtyard, pointing at the boy lounging nearby. She had took him skipping lessons again, and demanded an explanation. Her irritation indicated this wasn't the initial time. Resting lazily on a tree branch, the blond boy answered with disinterest. Despite his title as a hero, Alt missed pressure. He saw no reason to exert himself without true purpose. Morning sunlight spilled into the elegant bedroom, casting a soft glow on the canopy bed. Apriyuto awakened beneath the covers, his eyes still serious with sleep. Outside, a minor bird chirped on the window railing. Without full awareness, his hand reached out and pressed against the warmth beside him. Nestled close, the known shape brought support. Still lost in his drowsy state, he nuzzled onward, his head half awake, driven by instinct rather than thought. A voice shattered the steady. Maria, the Ark family's maid, looked down at him with a pleased smile. Her kind playful took him completely off guard. His eyes flew open, and the circumstance became plain in an instant. Alarm overcome Apriyuto. He recoiled and yelled in pure awkwardness, his voice echoing through the manor walls. Maria, ever steady, answered cheerfully, brushing off the circumstance as if nothing had happened. She compared herself to an elder sister. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the manor, Wool busily washed plates, humming a bright tune. The steady in the kitchen waited in stark contrast to the chaos just seen earlier upstairs. Within the kitchen, Maria approached Wool, who was finishing up the morning chores. She asked whether Apriyuto had already returned to his space. Wool verified he had gone back right after breakfast, still smiling brightly. Noticing the bright mood, Maria casually mentioned it. Wool immediately mutual her excitement. Apriyuto had given her chocolate earlier. That simple motion was enough to put her in an unusually high-spirited state. Delighted, she spoke about how sweet and delicious the chocolate was, admitting she hadn't called such a treat even existed. Maria, pleased, asked if breakfast went without trouble. Wool wavered for a moment but managed a nod. Her mood shifted. Wool suddenly burst into tears, shouting that she had been scolded by Apriyuto. Her crying lingered through the kitchen, catching Maria completely off guard. Trying to explain, Wool confessed she had used detection power to secretly listen to the conversation earlier that morning. She had only told Maria because she was genuinely worried. Despite her tears, she understood her mistake. Maria softly took responsibility for the misunderstanding, and Wool finally calmed, accepting the apology. Maria softly placed her hand over her chest, eyes filled with quiet worry. Despite her loyalty, she often noticed Apriyuto distanced himself emotionally. Her gaze dropped, recalling a hidden thought. Perhaps, she considered, Apriyuto's aloofness wasn't dismissal. Maybe it stemmed from his own warmth, a desire not to weight people with his struggles. That belief warmed her demeanor, giving her hope. Within the kitchen, Wool's voice cut through the air with power. Resolute, she announced her intent to grow stronger, capable of protecting Apriyuto with everything she had. Maria, just reaching, mentioned her plans for a sword practice session, surprising Wool. Excitement sparked in Wool's eyes as she argued on joining, but Maria softly recalled her that she had already trained with Apriyuto the day before. Maria asked to take today's session instead, hoping to improve herself without dispute. Seeing the fairness of the request, Wool nodded, her shoulders relaxing. Together the two servants turned their focus to the task at hand, knowing that both their hearts were aligned to work, protect, and one day earn the full faith of their owner. Maria walked onto the practice field, her demeanor firm and unwavering. Certainty swelled through her as she gripped the wooden sword. Resolute not to waver, she announced her will to win this match against Apriyuto. Without delay, she launched onward, swinging with focused resolve. Her posture was solid, her movements quick. Apriyuto faced her head-on, set for the challenge. Each step she took radiated her will to prove herself capable. The clash of wooden blades lingered across the courtyard, blows shared rapidly, both sides unrelenting. Maria pressed onward, parrying with sharp precision. Apriyuto countered cleanly, keeping his ground with collected skill as their swords collided again and again. Weight intensified as Apriyuto's strikes grew heavier. Maria barely blocked an abrupt lunge, and her grip weakened faintly. Sweat ran down her face as irritation flashed in her eyes. Despite that, she refused to back down. Distance widened between them, giving her a short pause. Breathing hard, she stared ahead. Formerly she had been seen as a coming warrior, yet now she found herself struggling. The gap between ideal and reality became painfully plain. Apriyuto waited with a grin, issuing a firm challenge for another match. His certainty and persistence took Maria off guard. At the sound of her name, she turned sharply, eyes wide with surprise and uncertainty. A junior boy walked onward, wooden sword in hand, pleading for one more round. The thought landed Maria deeply. That same voice, filled with innocence and respect, lingered from her past. Years ago, she had gone by the name Maria Stella. Lifted among nobles, she trained diligently with her junior brother. Swordplay had once been their mutual joy, a symbol of their bond and her honor as a coming warrior. She could still recall the excitement on his face when he called her name, asking for her time, her notice. Back then, everything sensed simpler, each swing of the sword a moment of joy, not task or proof. Their parents waited high in her thought, her father a respected warrior, her mother, hard yet warm, surrounded by expectations and love. Maria formally believed her route was certain. Those memories now awakened the will she'd almost lost. Origa's joyful laughter formerly filled the house with power. His innocent grin recalled Maria of a time when everything sensed safe. As the youngest, he had been shielded, cherished, and never formally caused trouble. Harming him was unthinkable. That happiness didn't last. Calm dissolved abruptly, and the quiet warmth of their home turned doubtful. What had formerly been ordinary became remote. The support of clan meals and mutual routines slipped into thought. Entering the space slowly, Maria saw her mother sitting beside the bed. Her father and Origa lay there, both weakened and pale. No words were shared. Grief hung in the air, heavier than quiet. Illness had assumed grip. Recovery power provided nothing. Despite every attempt, no method showed results. Alarm landed Maria at the realization. Even the most basic hope healing was denied. Watching Origa's shallow breaths, a framed photograph sat nearby. All four smiled in that captured moment. Clarity landed her. Giving up wasn't an option. She couldn't allow this to end in despair. Something had to be done, no matter how minor the chance. Desperation had led them to borrow money from every possible origin. Expensive priests and scarce potions were used in hopes of finding a cure. Despite every effort, nothing worked. The last result was two graves side by side, marking the end of those she loved. Grief overcome her. Kneeling beside the last body, she couldn't believe what had become of her life. With both parents and her brother gone, she was left with nothing but sorrow and a mountain of unpaid debts. Though despair remained, Giving up was not an option. She couldn't repay warmth with anger or failure. Hands formerly provided to help were not something she would reject. Death might have seemed easier, but task kept her grounded. Will started to take root. If there continued any route onward, she was resolute to find it. Watching from the doorway, someone questioned her will, but no delay appeared in her reply. A sword faced her, a lapse down by her father. The mystic weapon symbolized resolve and legacy. More than a tool, it carried a purpose she now chose to accept with firm will. Stripped of all possessions, the small nobleman sat among other prisoners, defeated and hollow. No matter what was surrendered, land, honor, or heritage, the crushing debts continued unpaid. Ownership of the region was revoked, and returned to the kingdom. His nobles erased. With no route of redemption provided, he was reduced to a mere commodity. Branded as a slave, he was forced to desert his persona and accept a fate beneath dignity. In his new life, he encountered a boy named Apriyuto Arc, a fencer of impressive skill. Despite being around the same age, the boy carried himself with an aggressive intensity. Their initial encounter left a bitter impression, brash, unrefined, and arrogant, completely unlike his late brother. That initial distaste shifted during practice. A maid named Maria, agile and unyielding, blocked Apriyuto's fierce assault with no delay. From the sidelines, the former nobleman watched in awe as she walked in with perfect timing. Although Apriyuto masked his hurt behind forceful movements, the fact was evident. The boy's effort to fight through injury, to remain firm despite exhaustion, exposed something hidden, something both tragic and commendable. Strain built as Apriyuto and Maria locked eyes, swords lifted. Each movement sharpened their focus. Conviction flared in both their reactions as the clash intensified. Neither gave ground easily. Apriyuto launched a fierce strike, knocking the sword clean from Maria's grip. Her hands lifted instinctively in defense, but the outcome was already decided. His aggressive push overcome her guard completely. Unexpectedly, Maria found herself pulled into an embrace. Tears formed in her eyes, though the reason continued unspoken. A mixture of exhaustion and respect warmed her demeanor. Their spar ended with her defeat formally again. From a distance, the practice ground sensed quiet, almost serene. Maria's voice broke the quiet as she confessed her loss 10 times in a row. Her gaze dropped, humbled by his talent. Apriyuto waited firm, showing perspective. While people honored his skill, he saw his limits plainly. To him, his father's resolve continued unmatched, a terrifying standard. His words weren't of honor, but of realism. He referred to his father as a monster, someone far outside comparison. Hearing Apriyuto talk with such candid suspicion about his father left Maria visibly shaken. His honesty pierced through assumptions she had long held about loyalty and power. For someone like him to issue allegiance implied at tensions far hidden than she foreseen. As ideas remained, Apriyuto laid out a troubling scenario. His father's absence from the called narrative created uncertainty. There were gaps in the timeline, incidents never witnessed, intentions never verified. Before the conversation could darken more, Maria indicated a break. Smiling kindly, she invited him to sit down and rest. While Apriyuto argued they continue, his momentary distraction betrayed fatigue. Her worry continued, unspoken but evident. They settled softly on the bench, side by side beneath the soft light filtering through the trees. Hunger replaced strain, and Maria's thoughtful preparation appeared in the form of a picnic basket. The mood shifted to something calmer. Without complaint, he approved the showing. A faint smile crossed his face as he chewed, softening his usually sharp demeanor. She laughed softly beside him, pleased by the minor calm they mutual. Maria softly watched as Apriyuto showed signs of weariness. Showing her lap with a kind smile, she spoke gently, prepared to give him a spot to rest. Despite his objection, the exhaustion in his posture betrayed his words. Warmth radiated from her gaze as she leaned onward faintly. A quiet invitation elapsed through her steady demeanor, patient and unwavering, waiting for him to accept. Apriyuto's eyes shifted toward her face. His demeanor took between surprise and delay. Something in her sincerity disarmed him. The moment extended, filled with quiet feeling rather than words. Ultimately, he lay his head across her lap. The feeling was known not from experience but thought. Recollections appeared of a similar place from the story he formerly read. What formerly existed only on the book had become real before his eyes. Later, the two mutual tea beneath the shade of stone pillars. The air was steady, touched with the scent of greenery. Nothing urgent pulled at them now. In quiet, they sat with the weight of recent ideas lingering, unspoken yet understood. While sitting at the table, Apriyuto brought up the martial arts tournament in the royal capital. His voice carried a firm tone, directed toward the maid Wool, who remained pouring tea with a bright demeanor. Nearby children overheard the mention of the event, and reacted with excitement. Plans were already forming among them. The idea of going to such a grand spectacle filled the air with chatter, though Wool's focus continued on the sweets. Apriyuto answered calmly, leaving it plain he would not be participating. His refusal came as a surprise to the people, especially given their certainty in his abilities. Expectations of his victory had been voiced with no delay. Wool suddenly lost her balance mid-task, shocked or distracted by the lively discussion. Her body lunged onward uncontrollably as the tray slipped from her grip. Somehow she managed to recover in time. A rapid mid-air rotation landed her safely, albeit awkwardly. With her composure regained, she whispered relief under her breath. Nothing broke, and no one was injured, but all eyes continued fixed on her agility and the strain it had unexpectedly awakened. A sharp grin spread across Apriyuto's face as the teacup soared through the air. With precise timing, his hand shot out and took it before it could shatter. Gasps from nearby children filled the space, impressed by the effortless display. Without missing a beat, he announced his verdict. Wool, still keeping a cup of her own, blinked in uncertainty. Surprise spread across every face as notice shifted fully to her. Questions rose quietly in their eyes. Had he truly said her name? Sitting at the table, Wool wavered. The people leaned in, expecting her response. Her voice cracked as she sought clarity, unclear if she had misunderstood. Suspicion settled over her like a shadow. Eyes formed with tears as anxiety overtook her. Participating meant public exposure, and failure would reflect directly on him. Dread of disappointing Apriyuto gripped her more tightly than the thought of competition itself. Certainty from across the table attempted to steady her. Apriyuto recalled her of the practice they'd gone through. Losing wasn't an option, not after everything he had taught her. His words weren't just encouragement, they were faith. Elapsed to her without delay. Wool stopped as she heard the challenge: defeat the descendant of the hero. The promise of popular sweets from the royal capital sweetened the agreement, and her eyes sparkled with abrupt conviction. With no delay, Wool announced her willingness to take on the task. The offer became even grander, anything she wanted if she won. Her excitement erupted, her minor form bouncing with power across the polished tiles. Imagination took over as she envisioned the rewards. Brightly smiling, she listed her desires: new weapons and cute clothes. People watched with quiet amusement as her enthusiasm swelled outside the battle itself. Clenching her fists tightly, Wool swore to prove everything. She would show her owner that she could win, grow stronger, and become truly useful. This match was not anymore just a fight. It was her moment to shine. Fueled by promise and honor, Wool yelled with fierce will. Apriyuto lingered her cry, ordering her to defeat the hero's heir. Together they affirmed their mutual goal: to win, to celebrate, and to enjoy the sweet taste of victory. At the Marquis Manor, Alicia was suddenly questioned about the hero's whereabouts. With obvious irritation, she confessed Ardo was likely slacking off again, earning her father's sharp rebuke. Within the manor, the discussion turned serious. The hero's skill was no ordinary gift. It was divine, handed down from the initial hero himself. Those born with such a power were foreseen to defend the kingdom and uphold its coming. Despite his obligations, Ardo's carefree attitude often caused worry. The Marquis exhaled heavily, voicing his disappointment. Every time he relaxed his watch, the boy vanished. Alicia waited quietly. Her demeanor varied with irritation and familiarity. Scenes like this were all too common. Meanwhile, Ardo made his way to the capital's martial arts tournament arena. Surrounded by knights and warriors, he looked ahead with a sparkle in his eyes, plainly excited for the battles to come. When Alicia took up, she scolded him. Ardo, as normal, brushed it off with enthusiasm. Task might guide him, but his chest continued with excitement. Dragged behind, Alicia pondered if he'd ever truly take things seriously. Ardo, full of certainty, announced his part with honor. As the hero, he believed his sole task was to fight. Planning, awareness, and preparation were, in his head, best left to Alicia and people more suited to it. Alicia, however, could barely contain her irritation. In her eyes, resolve meant nothing in the hands of someone careless. No matter how divine the skill, foolishness rendered it meaningless. Ardo's blank response only deepened her exasperation. With hands crossed, Alicia confessed her weight. Her father had tasked her with proving her worth by winning the tournament, a task he made sound far simpler than reality. Ardo casually mentioned a rumor. A participant from the Arc clan would be attending. Alicia's demeanor shifted from worry to interest, as the name carried weight far outside the arena. The Arc clan wasn't just powerful, they were notorious. Whispered connections to the underworld, hidden dealings, and unspoken command made them a dreaded bearing. If one of them came into the tournament, the battle ahead would be more than a test of resolve. It would be dangerous. Ardo's eyes gleamed with excitement. The tournament, the challenge, even the peril it thrilled him. Alicia folded her hands, letting out a minor sigh. No matter how carefree he moved, he was undeniably eager for what lay ahead. At the tournament table, Ardo was formally registered under the recommendation of Marquis Mirai. His placement in the under-15 division drew notice, though few knew his real resolve. Whispers trailed his name through the hall. One of the officials recalled participants of the rules. Only physical weapons and talents were permitted. Power was strictly off-limits. Ardo nodded and was directed to the waiting space, surrounded by hopeful small fighters. Alicia provided him her backing one last time before the matches started. Ardo answered with quiet conviction and walked onward. She promised to cheer from the stands, though a hint of worry remained in her voice. Marching down the tunnel, Ardo spoke bravely of wiping out evil. The Arc clan, covered in secrets, waited in his route. At the same time, Lord Ipryuto, steady, sharp-eyed, came into the place. Alicia watching it all unfold. Within the elegant lounge, Ipryuto sat calmly, flanked by two aristocratic children. One of them, a curly-haired girl with elaborate ribbons, provided him water with a bright smile. Ipryuto's head raced with worry. Her civil offer triggered an avalanche of private speculation. Stories about her background awakened discomfort. This was no ordinary nobleman. She belonged to a clan called for its power and mystery. Something about the circumstance sensed off. Still unclear, Ipryuto approved cautiously, requesting the water at space temperature. The girl summoned water into a glass with surprising ease, her tone as bright as ever. He continued tense but decided to observe rather than reject the motion. Wearing a smile too bright to issue, the girl presented the sparkling drink. Her declaration freshly prepared water did nothing to ease his nerves, yet her enthusiasm left little space for refusal. Ipryuto finally took a sip, bracing himself. Unexpectedly, the water tasted fine. As he swallowed, he confessed she had indeed said it was just water. For now he would let it go, but caution still remained behind his collected demeanor. Tears formed in her eyes as the strain finally overflowed. Her flushed cheeks betrayed unstable feelings she tried to mask. A single glance held both relief and delay, recalling the weight of her anticipation. Within the luxury hall, Ipryuto sat calmly while the bright girl proudly provided her enchanted water. Across the space, Chris watched curiously, startled by the invitation. People sipped the drink, plainly impressed by the magic-infused taste. Suddenly suspicion crept into the moment. Chris's bright tone turned to alarm. Ipryuto's demeanor blacked as he realized what the boy was about to reveal. Gripping the glass, he silenced the issue before it could be voiced. The mood shifted as the arena gates began. From the darkness, Wool walked onward, clad in tight gear, with no obvious weapon. Whispers rose in the audience. Her minor form and bare fist drew both interest and worry. Across the arena, her opponent waited, blade drawn. Observers debated her strange equipment. With weapons ill-suited to her size, Wool had been outfitted with punch-based gear instead. Her true edge wasn't resolve, it was unrelenting, blinding speed. On the viewing platform, Chris leaned onward anxiously. Despite Wool's progress, worry filled his voice. Ipryuto continued collected while the girl beside him beamed with honor. Certainty in Wool's practice clashed with the worry in Chris's eyes. Rules for the match had shifted. Ipryuto had banned Beastman transformation, ensuring no one relied on brute power. Chris was startled but started to understand the tactical restraint. Keeping abilities secret was a deliberate strategic move. Down in the arena, Wool faced her opponent directly. He readied his sword, confident in his resolve. Steady and focused, Wool didn't flinch. Her trainer, watching from above, spoke firmly. He had guided her progress to this moment. The clash erupted without caution. Steel blurred through the air as Wool evaded the strike effortlessly. Her eyes tracked every movement with precision. While the sword aimed to intimidate, her body flowed like a shadow, untouched. One step became 10. With a single burst, she darted across the arena, weaving past defenders. Fallen opponents lay in her wake. From the stands, Chris gasped in awe. Speed solo had shifted the tide instantly. Cheers erupted across the arena as Wool danced around her opponents. Chris leaned onward, amazed by her unmatched speed. Beside him, Ipryuto watched with a knowing smile. The battlefield below was hers solo. On the ground, Wool narrowed her eyes, crouched low like a predator. Every movement was deliberate, her reflexes razor-sharp. Her target fumbled, unaware of the strike about to come. She waited, tense as a drawn bow. Speed swelled again. From the stands, the place blurred as Wool trailed her normal impulses. There was no delay, no calculation, just instinct and momentum. She darted like a shadow, evading blades with beast-like grace. A single blow landed clean. Her fist landed hard and precise, crushing her opponent's guard. The sound lingered as his body hit the ground. she waited firm, fierce and unyielding. Her beastman heritage shone through. Quiet trailed the last strike. Chris waited locked as realization set in. From above he watched Wool standing over her fallen foes. His voice quivered in awe as he whispered the words, "A complete victory." Applause surrounded the arena, but Apriyudo continued modest. Though people honored his foresight, he gave credit where it was due. Wool had fought with her own resolve. Chris confessed his earlier doubts, showing a quiet apology as Wool bowed cheerfully. With the match concluded, notice shifted. Chris turned, curious about the next event. Apriyudo verified what they suspected: the upcoming battle belonged to the hero. From the arena's gate, a new warrior walked into the light. He carried the weight of legend, a man who formally toppled a powerful enemy despite impossible odds. His bearing solo awakened the crowd into restless excitement. Apriyudo leaned onward, eyes sharp. Interest replaced his earlier steady. The hero's resolve, drawn from the initial story, was now under scrutiny. "Let's see what he's got," he muttered, eager to judge the famed warrior directly. The hero strode confidently across the field. Conceit colored his words, declaring his opponent unfortunate. With no delay, he lunged into combat. Steel clashed against steel as blades met in a fierce exchange beneath the roar of the crowd. From the viewing platform, uncertainty crept into Chris's voice. Despite the hero's title, his movements faltered. Apriyudo, sharp-eyed and collected, verified the troubling reality: he was indeed the hero, yet plainly struggling to keep pace. Closer analysis exposed the issue. Though tough, the hero missed precision. He relied solely on brute power, swinging recklessly. Apriyudo noted how the boy's combat instinct fell short, even compared to Wool's refined awareness. The battle came to an abrupt end. A cheer rippled through the crowd as the hero waited over his opponent's body. Though victorious, the match sensed underwhelming. Chris's observation cut through the noise. "Oh, he won." Apriyudo narrowed his gaze. Chris provided a more charitable view, suggesting the boy missed real combat experience. Perhaps time and challenge could sharpen his head. Assigning him risky duties might work as a means to help him grow. Outside the arena, a troubling thought appeared. The crowd might cheer now, but the nation had placed serious expectations on someone plainly unprepared. Doubts remained in the air. What exactly was this nation thinking? The arena buzzed with anticipation. The finals of the under-15 division were about to begin. Footsteps lingered through the stone hallway as the next challenger walked into the light, sword in hand and cloak trailing behind. Certainty radiated from the hero as he approached. Though past matches had tested him, none had matched his self-proclaimed might. Silently he celebrated his progress, already envisioning the glory that faced him at the end. His opponent waited just ahead, an enigmatic person bearing the Arc family's name. The hero tightened his grip. He knew victory here would crown him champion. Ideas of Alicia flashed through his head as he steeled his will. From the tunnel, the arena began up to a roaring crowd. The hero imagined the cheers lasting outside this day. This battle was his moment. He promised himself he would return with state and honor earned. Two figures locked eyes across the battlefield. Wool stared with fierce conviction, while the hero smiled with practiced conceit. Strain grew thick between them. In that instant the air stilled. The last match had truly begun. The announcer's voice thundered through the arena as the last match was announced: Ardo versus Wool. Both fighters charged onward, conviction blazing in their eyes. Thousands of spectators watched in suspense as record was about to be written. At the referee's signal, the duel commenced. Wool hurried in head first, eyes sharp and intent. Ardo lifted his sword defensively, startled by the speed and aggression coming from such a minor opponent. Wool suddenly ended her advance, planting her feet with precision. Ardo, confused by the pause, asked about her lineage, trying to confirm if she truly belonged to the notorious Arc clan. Instead of answering, Wool spoke gently, almost to herself. This battle wasn't about glory, it was a gift for her owner. A turn in her bearing trailed. With a gleam in her eye and a disturbing smile, she embodied pure devotion. Ardo stopped. Her demeanor disturbed him. Though small, she radiated something unshakable. Ideas raced. What had the Arc clan done to her? That look didn't belong to a child. It belonged to someone forged through relentless, merciless practice. Wool walked into the arena with no delay. Her opponent, a nobleman, questioned her bearing, suspecting the Arc family's involvement. She answered plainly if she won, she'd get a meal. That was enough reason for her. Without waiting for more words, she lunged at him. Her foot cut through the air, aimed directly at his face. Speed and precision replaced ceremony. Fighting wasn't about state, it was survival. He barely managed to raise his weapon in time. Observing her eyes, he observed an unstrong focus that disturbed him. For someone fighting just for food, her resolve was crushing. A abrupt thought landed him. Was she always this hungry? Driven by more than hunger, Wool charged again. Hatred for the Arc clan swelled within her. They had assumed something from her, and she had no plan of letting it go. Every motion conveyed a grudge that ran close. Clashing metal rang across the tiles. He struggled to follow her movements. She was too fast, relentless, and unyielding. Each strike forced him more back. What started as a tournament now sensed like a reckoning. Wool's kick landed the hero's blade with enough power to stagger him. He couldn't mask his alarm. Despite his practice, he struggled against someone so minor. Honor stung his voice as he yelled not to be underestimated. With a roar, Ardo lifted his sword overhead and unleashed a powerful strike. His irritation boiled over. This match, meant to display dominance, was quickly pivotal into a test of survival. Spectators leaned onward as strain grew. A woman in the crowd screamed a caution. Wool had vanished. Uncertainty spread through the stands as Ardo scanned the arena in disbelief. Her abrupt disappearance disrupted his concentration. Without caution, Wool sprinted toward him at full speed. Her movements were quiet and precise. Gasps lingered from the audience. Ardo's eyes widened the moment he realized her method. It was already too late. A solid blow launched Ardo into the air, flipping him backward. He flew across the arena, crashing violently into the far wall. The crowd erupted in alarm. Wool waited firm, demeanor steady, her objective complete. Ardo crashed onto the arena tiles, unconscious from the blow. Gasps rippled through the shocked crowd. Wool waited softly, her hands folded, demeanor steady and unshaken by the attention. Cheers erupted across the arena as she looked around in awe. Never before had she waited at the center of such crushing praise. Her quiet resolve had earned a moment of glory. Victory secured, she smiled with genuine delight. Ideas of her promised reward danced in her head. At last a sweet meal faced, and nothing else mattered more in that moment. Nobles gathered in their high balcony seats, overlooking the grand arena. The stadium lingered with roaring cheers, every seat packed with anticipation. A noble-led match had begun, with strain running high across the audience. Down below, Wool waited quietly, her breath steady. Across from her lay the fallen hero, unconscious on the icy tiles. Above, the crowd erupted in disbelief as the unlikely outcome settled in. From their restrained seating, a proteo leaned back confidently, watching Wool method the center. The girl beside him smiled brightly, while another partner sat in shocked amazement. Victory had come faster than foreseen. They discussed the battle with clarity. The hero's talents had been powerful, yet improperly used. Wool had outmaneuvered him from the start, denying even a single blow. Any strike would have turned the fight, but she never permitted the chance. Apriyuto concluded with a collected demeanor. Then Wool, for now, was undeniably stronger. He acknowledged it without fanfare, stating the fact with steady assurance. Their group had not just won, they had proven something greater on that stage. That was all. Apriyuto and his companions walked through a stone hallway, the mood relaxed yet thoughtful. Despite the recent win, Apriyuto voiced caution. The hero, though inexperienced, held enough capacity to be dangerous in the coming. Joyfully, Wool sprinted down the hall, full of excitement. Her power differed the group's steady. With no delay, she threw her hands up and ran toward Apriyuto. Plainly, her head was already on sweet rewards and carefree outings rather than tactics or aftermath. Apriyuto met her enthusiasm with quiet acknowledgement. He lifted his hand, softly placing it on her head. A soft compliment trailed, acknowledging her effort. He promised a proper reward, not just for winning, but for carrying out the planning with precision. The simple praise reached Wool deeply. Her demeanor shifted from teasing to touched. Without giving her time to overthink it, Apriyuto encouraged her to enjoy the day. The street outside faced, lined with rooftops, flags, and the promise of normalcy. Meanwhile, the hero lay resting in a warm space, unaware of the ongoing conversations. A partner watched over him softly as the fire crackled nearby. Ardo lay unconscious in bed, his breathing faint but steady. Alicia sat at his bedside, eyes wide with disbelief. Remaining still, she reflected softly on the match. Ardo had relied too much on raw resolve, expecting it to bear him through. Alicia hoped this defeat would teach him the value of preparation and awareness in combat. Her irritation bubbled beneath the surface. She had always picked up the slack, managing Ardo's obligations whenever he strayed from task. While he trained or skipped lessons, she endured the scolding and cleaned up the consequences. Suddenly, Ardo awakened. Alicia leaned onward quickly, relieved to see him awake. His voice was weak, but he recognized her. In another space, their father sat in quiet thought, knowing full well it had been his decision to entrust the hero with such a serious route. Ardo stared blankly at the ceiling, the weight of failure beginning to settle. He muttered the words aloud, simple and undeniable. For the initial time he approved the outcome. The hero had lost, and now he had to grow. Ardo sat straight on the bed, eyes plain, voice firm. He informed Alicia that he had made a verdict. Although he confessed his defeat, she asked if anything valuable came from it. He verified it did. Alicia's face lit up instantly. Tears of joy filled her eyes. She believed Ardo had finally hugged the obligations of being a true hero. Her faith, long held without speaking, seemed to be rewarded at last. But Ardo's next words shattered her hope. With resolute seriousness, he announced his intent to crush the Arc clan. Alicia stopped, confused by the abrupt turn in tone. The verdict was not about justice, it was vengeance. His reasoning spilled out. Watching the girl fight in the finals, he believed no nobleman should ever power a child into combat. The Arc clan, rumored to be cruel, now symbolized everything he waited against. Alicia could hardly keep up with the emotive whiplash. Alarm overtook her. She recalled him that the Arc clan weren't just any nobles, they were high-ranking elites. Challenging them would be careless for anyone, especially a common-born hero. Sitting with hands crossed, Ardo appeared close in thought. Alicia warned him of the peril. Challenging the Arc clan meant inviting disaster upon the Mirai household. Her voice rose, but his quiet plainly made called he wasn't hearing her. Scenes later, he waited with newfound power, grinning. Without acknowledging her caution, he proposed they unite to take down the Arc clan. Her shoulders slumped in disbelief, seeing her words hadn't reached him at all. Irritation grew heavier. Though confident in his own will, he confessed the challenge was too great to face solo. Faith placed in Alicia, he believed her backing would be enough to tip the balance. Her patience snapped. She yelled, unable to accept being roped into his careless scheme. The situation demanded more than raw feeling, it required reason, planning, and command. Hands on her hips, she delivered terms. If he truly wanted her help, he had to present evidence, gain the faith of nobles, and raise an army. Only then would she lend her backing. Until that happened, his vision continued nothing more than a fantasy. Tears formed up in Alicia's eyes as she lifted her voice, pleading. She begged Ardo to stop antagonizing the Arc clan. Dread for her own family's safety outweighed any ambition he harbored for justice. Ardo waited still, processing her words. Rather than react with boldness, he acknowledged her terms. With measured steady, he recited her conditions: form an alliance with nobles and the royal clan. As foreseen, her perspective was strategic and grounded. Certainty replaced delay. A smile crept across his face as he approved the challenge. Sword in hand, he announced his intent to fulfill the conditions and win her faith. Alicia looked on, shocked by his abrupt burst of conviction. Far away, a conversation shifted the focus. Within the royal palace, Apriyuto received a message from Prince Michael. The prince sought that Wool be brought to the royal castle. Awareness of Michael's control grew sharper. He had formally backed the hero in the initial storyline. Crossing him now risked shifting the tides. Allies and enemies alike started to realize how delicate their positions had become. Apriyuto informed Wool of their instant destination, the royal castle. Prince Michael had summoned them without delay. Wool waited locked, confused by the abrupt announcement and unclear of what it meant for her. Alarm took grip instantly. Eyes wide, Wool imagined the direst. Her quivering voice questioned whether she had done something wrong, and fearfully she asked if this was a death sentence. Then Apriyuto calmly dismissed her dreads. He described the prince had likely been impressed by her during the martial arts tournament. The invitation was possibly acknowledgement, not punishment. His tone continued steady and collected. Wool's anxiety shifted to self-doubt. Tears formed up again as a new dread appeared: dismissal. She questioned whether her owner was trying to desert her, or had grown to hate her, her voice soft and unstable. Assurance came swiftly. Apriyuto waited firm, hands crossed, promising he would never let her go. He instructed her to refuse any offer from the prince if she didn't want to go. With resolute assurance, he promised protection, no matter the cost. Apriyuto stared down with assurance, his words asserting command without delay. The girl waited locked, took in a gaze that refused boldness. Command closed around him like a second skin, leaving no space for objection. Without delay, the maid dropped her head and echoed her allegiance. People around them watched in disbelief, their reactions swinging between dread and worry. Her yielding wasn't just to commands, it marked a line crossed that everyone present recognized. Within the royal palace, Prince Michael of the Rhinana Kingdom welcomed Apriyuto wearing a smile. The marbled halls and grand towers hung above, framing a meeting of power and loyalty. Beside him, Wool waited quiet, acknowledged yet stripped of state by the prince's words. Apriyuto's eyes narrowed at the name. Memories awakened as he watched the prince's face, mistrust forming behind his still demeanor. Perched on his seat, Apriyuto questioned the abrupt flood of guards. The mood shifted, too guarded for a friendly visit. His head worked quickly, calculating the possibilities, knowing well that faith had no spot in this space. Within the grand room, Apriyuto's mistrust deepened. Dozens of armed guards filled every corner, far more than necessary. Their quiet bearing hung like a trap disguised as protocol. Prince Michael dismissed the worry with a relaxed smile. He leaned back, justifying the excessive power by citing his royal state. A claim of precaution masked the underlying strain, while his tone continued unnervingly pleasant. Apriyuto provided a steady response, placing a settling hand on Wool's shoulder. The girl tightened her fists, seething beneath a collected surface. Rage simmered in her eyes, but she held her position, awaiting her master's signal. The lead guard walked onward, breaking the charade of hospitality. He requested the purpose of Apriyuto's visit, though his posture made it plain no reply would shift what trailed. A danger was buried beneath the pleasantries. Michael suddenly exposed his demand. Without caution, he ordered Apriyuto to hand over Wool, declaring the meeting over upon compliance. His words landed like a blade, ignoring relations, backed by the command of gathered steel. Apriyuto gave a firm refusal, his demeanor unchanging. Even with a blade drawn near him, he continued collected. Calmly he ended the matter, signaling it was time for them to leave. Wool, sitting beside him, trailed his lead without issue. The guards answered instantly. Blades were drawn in synchronized motion, steel glinting under the room lights. Their rigid posture and readiness made plain that leaving peacefully was not anymore an option. Commands had shifted from negotiation to confrontation. Rather than alarm, Apriyuto waited his ground. He questioned the hostile action, requiring an explanation for the abrupt escalation. Internally, he prepared for combat if necessary. This was not anymore a diplomatic exchange, it had become a danger. Prince Michael erupted in laughter. He ridiculed Apriyuto's will and mocked the Ark family's reputation. His conceit grew louder, emboldened by the dozens of swords pointed at his guest. Victory seemed guaranteed in his eyes. Icy conviction flashed in Apriyuto's gaze. He not anymore entertained Michael's command. Wool tightened her fists, staring down the prince's control. Neither of them would yielding. Wool forced onward, shielding Apriyuto with her body. Her voice rose boldly, declaring her loyalty with no delay. Apriyuto didn't interfere, allowing her resolve to talk louder than any control. Together they presented a united front against the prince. Michael's composure finally cracked, his demeanor twisted in rage, words lashing out with venom. Not anymore masking behind pretense, he unleashed threats without restraint. Feeling overtook reason, and the air around him grew tense. From his spot the prince laid out his foreseen outcome. Apriyuto and Wool would fall, cut down by royal guards for supposed provocation. As he turned away smugly, the circumstance seemed entirely under his command. Without waiting, Michael gave the order. His voice rang loud, ordering the guards to slay. They answered without delay, swords lifted high and poised to strike. Violence was not anymore a danger, it had begun. Before the first blade landed, a black surge of power swelled through the space. One of the guards staggered as dark power tore across his body. Alarm spread instantly. This wasn't the outcome they had intended for. Apriyuto gave Wool an instant order to call for help. Chaos already unfolded behind him as fallen guards fell motionless. Across the space, Michael stopped, overcome by a reality that no longer trailed his expectations. Two remaining guards quivered, unable to oppose the growing weight. Dark power clung to their frames, halting their advance before their swords could strike. No words were shared, only dread settled in their eyes. A rapid movement cut across the air. Steel flashed as Apriyuto advanced with precision, not delay. His opponent failed to answer in time, already paralyzed by the power radiating from his posture. In a single instant, limbs fell to the ground. Blood trailed, staining the marble beneath their feet. The confrontation ended before anyone could grasp what had truly happened. Guards fell, disarmed and defeated. Surrounded by fallen enemies, Apriyuto waited quietly. He looked ahead, sword steady in hand. His voice carried no feeling as he delivered a last reminder of the caution already given. There was nothing left to misunderstand. A single sentence cut through the strain. Apriyuto's voice continued steady, but the message carried undeniable weight. Those who witnessed his power knew he wasn't bluffing. No one in the space dared to interrupt. Dread quickly overtook Michael. Back pressed into the seat, he lifted a quivering hand as if to stop an unseen power. Across the space, Apriyuto advanced slowly, dragging a trail of blood behind him. Each step sensed like a sentence being elapsed. Michael tried to reason, frantic to shift the outcome. He pointed to titles and noblemen's state, believing them to be protection. That defense, however, not anymore held value here. Command meant little against the consequences of treachery. Any remaining composure cracked more. Words lost clarity as Michael's voice fell. Apriyuto moved with complete command, undistracted by the prince's attempt to regain footing. Feeling finally exploded. Anger replaced pleading. Michael yelled with irritation at the way Apriyuto looked at him, at his bearing, at the feeling of being powerless. Nothing continued of the royal heir's honor, only raw hatred aimed at someone he could not anymore defeat. Michael's anger boiled over. Shouting with tightened fists, he hurled insults without restraint. His voice cracked as he called Apriyuto an eyesore. Across from him, Apriyuto calmly reached his hand, responding with quiet finality. He understood. The mood changed instantly. Power swelled outward as Apriyuto triggered his skill King's Dominion. Darkness warped and the very air grew serious. Standing firm, he recalled Michael that deeds had consequences. This was not anymore a caution. Michael gasped as unseen weight clamped down on his throat. Hands flew to his neck in alarm. On the other side of the space, Apriyuto waited resolute. A ordering voice cut through the moment, halting everything. A military officer barged in. His tone was sharp and authoritative, requiring both sides to cease immediately. The strain shattered. Order returned not from negotiation, but from Commander Power stepping in to stop escalation. Apriyuto dropped his arm and turned with ease. A confident smile replaced the earlier intensity. He addressed the new arrival with a relaxed greeting, moving as if nothing unusual had occurred. The mood lightened, but the message continued. Alarm stiffened the man's face as realization set in. The king's abrupt bearing shattered expectations. His command hung serious, leaving strain in its wake. Beneath the surface, worry brewed. Something about this visit sensed dangerously measured. A nobleman boy waited before the sitting figures, hands spread as he gave his account. He stated the people had drawn weapons against him, forcing the royal guards to destroy the danger. Earlier at his control, masked royal guards hurried onward with blades unsheathed. They moved without issue, moving in unison toward their marks. The execution was rapid and brutal, leaving no time for objection. In another space, a hard man stared at a mystic projection appearing above a book. His face tightened as sweat formed, watching what the device displayed. The place playing out did not match the story he had just heard. He held a circular artifact in his hand, eyes set on the footage being shown. The projection exposed incidents from the confrontation, capturing precise movements and scenes. Uncertainty settled in as the man tried to understand what he was seeing. Apriyuto waited calmly nearby, keeping the matching mystic tool. He described he had recorded everything beforehand, preparing in case the fact was distorted. His planning now exposed the lie and shifted command of the circumstance entirely. He waited firm before the high-ranking officer sitting in the parlor. The mood had shifted. Strain filled the room as the officer quietly processed the earlier revelation. After a long pause, he uttered Apriyuto's full name with serious significance. Breaking the quiet, the man dropped his head faintly and provided an apology. His voice carried sorrow, acknowledging the mistake made. Apriyuto listened without feeling, hands calmly clasped behind his back. The officer tried to justify his deeds, claiming the Ark clan had long served the royal clan. According to him, their loyalty demanded taking on difficult, even dishonorable duties, for the sake of national order, but Apriyuto's tone sharpened. He pointed out that loyalty should not be repaid with treachery. Questioning the legitimacy of recent deeds, Apriyuto challenged whether the verdict came directly from the royal clan. If it had, the Ark clan would have to re-evaluate their standing and obligations. As Apriyuto's words remained, the man stiffened, sweat forming again on his brow. Apriyuto, in contrast, gave a slight smile, steady, collected and in command. The power dynamic had plainly shifted. The officer's demeanor tightened as sweat streamed down his face. He confessed that the chaos stemmed from Michael's rampage. Although he tried to justify the circumstance, he confessed he never foreseen it to spiral this far out of command. Lying in a recovery bed, the injured boy was closed in bandages. He questioned Apriyuto's deeds, asking whether dismembering the guard was necessary. From his tone, it was plain he believed the struggle could have ended more peacefully. Apriyuto answered with no delay. He stated the facts plainly. The guard had attacked a nobleman and received what was due. Regardless of clan ties, defending oneself against a violent move continued justified. Pivotal to the people in the space, Apriyuto made his case clearer. The royal guards, he said, had failed in their task by not restraining Michael. Their inaction had caused the outcome, not his own choices. Blaming him, he concluded, was misguided. Sitting calmly, Apriyuto asked the issue that now hung heavily in the air. With unflinching eyes, he demanded to know how the royal clan would take responsibility for the damage caused under their name. Apriyuto laid out the offenses, plainly summoning a nobleman, attempting to seize his maid by power, and ending in attempted murder. He recalled them that such deeds, if viewed properly, would lead to lifelong imprisonment. As a proposed resolution, the opposing side provided compensation and house arrest for Prince Michael. Not satisfied, Apriyuto demanded stronger consequences. He argued that Michael be stripped of his state as heir. The request shocked the officer, who rose to his feet in alarm, visibly shaken by the unexpected demand. Feeling overtook the officer as he pleaded. Michael, being his only son, was essential to the royal succession. Without an heir, the royal family's coming would collapse. But Apriyuto pointed out that there continued an alternative, an option they had yet to consider. He presented Princess Hanyul as the solution. If she were to marry, her partner could assume the part of crown prince. From Apriyuto's view, her power and character far surpassed Michael's. The officer wavered, considering the possibility for the initial time. Suspicion crept back in as reality landed. Hanyul was blind. The officer argued she was unfit for confirmed tasks in her condition, creating yet another barrier in the route to resolution. Apriyuto acknowledged the worry about Princess Hanyul's blindness, but left the matter to higher command. He calmly stated that deciding her suitability should be left to His Majesty and the royal advisors. With resolute eyes, he plainly laid out his demands: compensation for both himself and his maid, and the removal of Prince Michael from the crown prince position. His gaze showed no delay. Faced with the ultimatum, the officer's demeanor hardened. Strain built as he prepared to relay the last verdict to the king. The matter was not anymore in his hands, it was now the monarch's weight to will. Later, in a quiet, sunlit conservatory, Apriyuto and his maid enjoyed a quiet tea time. The girl beamed with wide eyes, visibly overjoyed by the shift in mood and the unexpected luxury. She questioned the luxury spread before her, still unclear if it was truly permitted. Apriyuto assured her it was rightful compensation granted by the king. Wool waited nervously, unclear how to sequence what her owner had done. Her voice quivered as she questioned the wisdom of leaving an enemy of the prince. Apriyuto continued sitting, quiet and composed, as her concern remained in the air between them. The weight of her words became plain. Leaving an enemy of the prince meant defying the kingdom of Rhinana itself. Alarm spread across her face as she realized the scale of the opposition Apriyuto had willingly approved. Rather than retreat from the danger, Apriyuto exposed the royal family's deeds. They had attempted to take Wool from the Arc clan, despite the family's loyalty, using threats to power compliance. That treachery explained everything for him. Before more could be said, a loud voice cut through the strain, declaring the conversation over. The abrupt interruption brought a turn in mood, signaling that outside forces were already reacting to Apriyuto's posture. Even then, Apriyuto continued firm. To him, Wool was part of the Arc clan. Protecting her was his task, regardless of state. Their land existed before the kingdom. Apriyuto sat calmly in his chair, eyes sharp with certainty. Dismissively, he brushed aside the matter, unfazed by the strain it carried. His bearing radiated command, as though he'd faced such scenes countless times. Wool stared in disbelief, took between surprise and uncertainty. The words stung, hidden than she foreseen. Somewhere in her thought, voices lingered, reminders of desertion, dismissal, and the brutal truth she was told under the moonlit sky. Laughter erupted under the silver moon. Members of the wolf tribe mocked her from the darkness of the forest. Rough declarations cut through the night flaw marked her as disposable, a weight not worth claiming. Isolation defined her childhood. Locked away, unfit to work, she was deemed useless by those who owned her. Yet in a quiet hallway, Apriyuto reached out. He saw value where people did not, shattering her assumptions. Now, she waited with renewed purpose. Shelter, food, resolve, and a spot to belong. These gifts reshaped her chest. Not anymore just a discarded maid, she bore loyalty as her armor. Protecting Apriyuto became her reason to live. Wool waited firm, her eyes gleaming with honor and resolve. Certainty replaced the delay she formerly carried. Behind her, Apriyuto sipped his tea calmly, satisfied by her progress. Hall of the royal palace, strain built. Guards led a small nobleman onward, the sound of his footsteps echoing across the marble tiles. Awaiting judgment, he kneeled before the throne, dwarfed by the weight of the moment. From his elevated seat, the nobleman addressed Michael directly. His voice continued steady, yet firm. Michael continued on one knee, struggling under the gravity of his offense. He readied himself, knowing that lies would not save him this time. Desperation forced Michael to defend his deeds. With tightened fists, he argued that Apriyuto had provoked him. Accusation replaced remorse. His words held no sorrow, only justification. Blame shifted to avoid consequences, but resolve missed the resolve of fact. Fact shattered his claims in an instant. Projected memories proved him false. As the images served, his composure broke. Alarm overtook his conceit, and realization dawned too late. The lie collapsed under the weight of undeniable evidence. A message arrived in the courtroom, silencing all movement. The words came directly from Apraputo. At formally, the strain escalated. Across the space, the noble's demeanor changed as the ruling voice announced the mistake as irreversible. Without shame, the boy launched a stream of complaints. In a loud, unfiltered tone, he blamed Apraputo for disrupting his 10th birthday, calling him a coward. Instead of remorse, he doubled down, frantic to turn the focus away from himself. Rage boiled to the surface. Clenching his teeth, he yelled his true reason: vengeance. The boy not anymore masked his motives behind excuses. He had wanted to hurt Apraputo, not for justice, but to satisfy his wounded honor. Elsewhere in the space, an elder confirmed, tried to redirect the narrative. He stated another nobleman faction was to blame, insisting the Arc clan held no fault. The ruling nobleman dismissed objection. Calmly, he pronounced judgment. Regardless of political divisions, the move committed continued a crime. Michael yelled in boldness, refusing to accept the verdict. But fact could not be erased, and neither could guilt. The ruling voice delivered its verdict with finality. Michael was ordered to step down as crown prince. Alarm overtook the small noble's face, unable to comprehend the weight of the consequence. Imprisonment was spared, but the cost was severe. On his knees, Michael yelled in disbelief. The reality of losing his title landed harder than foreseen. Anger swelled as he called the verdict absurd, while guards waited quietly behind him. The throne continued unmoved by his objection. Though the punishment was firm, a sliver of pity trailed. If Michael approved responsibility, showed the footage to the nobles, and provided a sincere apology to Apraputo, reinstatement could be considered. It was a narrow window of redemption. Hesitating, Michael tried to plead more, but the ruler silenced him with a sharp control. His command left no space for argument. Seeing objection was futile, Michael turned away. Solo on the throne, the elder man watched his withdrawing person. Softly, he confessed his disappointment. Though formerly filled with hope for Michael's coming, he now saw only immaturity and recklessness. The weight of succession had proven too great. Following Michael's dismissal, the king faced a new dilemma, crowning Haniel in his spot. Close in thought, he paced the royal hall, weighing politics and belief. Beside him, an advisor quietly faced the sovereign's verdict. Then came a firm proposal. The king, with no delay, indicated uniting Haniel with Arc. His expression showed resolve, while the advisor waited, shocked by the unexpected turn in planning. Deliberation quickly shifted to practicality. Marrying Haniel into the Arc clan would work two purposes: stabilize succession and secure an alliance with Apraputo's powerful lineage. Political survival demanded a decision: either appease Duke Zen or align with the growing Arc name. Though uncertain, the advisor started to accept the logic. The king viewed the proposal as not just beneficial but essential. Moving against Apraputo now would be dangerous. The kingdom's coming required a stronger pillar, even if it defied tradition. 5 years elapsed. At the Arc clan mansion, Maria Stella trained with people in the courtyard. Now 20, her resolve still fell behind. She smiled wryly, acknowledging her limits, yet her bearing signaled progress amidst a reshaped political world. Maria smiled faintly, masking her struggle behind respect. Despite her efforts, she couldn't catch up. Someone close had grown far outside her range, and that quiet gap awakened unease in her chest. Wool dashed onward, sword in hand and eyes bright with conviction. No trace of delay continued. Certainty replaced past dreads as she eagerly challenged the next opponent, pulling everyone's notice with her enthusiasm. Apraputo walked onto the field, poised and set. His steady bearing silenced the crowd. Resolve had become normal for him, but he continued aware of the expectations resting on his shoulders as eyes trailed his every move. Apraputo, now 15, sat softly in the bath, recalling on his part as a nobleman. The steam-filled space provided a scarce moment of solitude, a short pause before his responsibilities deepened. With sword practice behind him, tomorrow marked the beginning of his life at the Royal Academy, the setting of the story he formerly knew. He remembered the incidents that would unfold, the roles people would play, and his position within it. Just as the water started to soothe his ideas, the doorway creaked open. Maria, his loyal maid, walked into the space. Showing to wash his back, she approached wearing a smile. Apraputo declined out of habit, though she continued insistent, moving closer with familiarity. Maria leaned in, blushing but firm. Her words, light-hearted and playful, took him off guard. Apraputo shifted uncomfortably, unclear whether to scold or retreat. Sensing his discomfort, Maria warmed her tone. She described her intent, wanting to backing him before his big day. Apraputo exhaled, showing a quiet nod, understanding her worry. even if he didn't entirely approve of her method. Apriyuto tried to shake off the overbearing bearing clinging to him. No matter how much he resisted, the woman's voice lingered with assurance, vowing to protect him from everything. Her persistence only deepened his irritation. Later, Apriyuto waited face to face with a man who described the Arc family's forbidden legacy. Spirit summoning, their special power, wasn't just a gift, it was a weight elapsed through blood. Viren, the present heir, made his posture plain, he would not yielding his life willingly. As he announced his will to fight, he issued a direct challenge to Apriyuto, instructing him to be set for battle. With no delay, Apriyuto returned the gaze. His voice was steady, yet determined. He acknowledged the cruel route set before them and approved it without flinching. To uphold the Arc name, he swore to be prepared even if it meant confronting his father. Quiet settled after the confrontation. Viren reflected on the brutal reality of their lineage. Now it made sense his absence from the initial story stemmed from his death during the inheritance ritual. The strain in the air grew heavier as Apriyuto and Viren faced each other in the room. Sword in hand, Apriyuto remembered the last time they fought. It had been 5 years since their blades last crossed. Locked in a quiet stare, both prepared for what was to come. Neither spoke, but their reactions exposed everything. There would be no keeping back. This was not any more practice. It was a battle of inheritance. Dark power erupted around Viren without caution. He summoned power laced with menace, his bearing now crushing. Darkness scattered through the space, drawn by his incantation, pulsing with concentrated power. Raising his sword, Viren cast the initial magic, Dark Hole. The space blacked as the void tore open beside him. Spiraling waves of power radiated outward, signaling the start of a clash that would determine fate. From the rift, spectral claws reached in all directions, reaching toward Apriyuto. Their sharp tips shimmered in unnatural motion. Apriyuto didn't flinch. With his grip tightening on the hilt, he readied for the coming assault, eyes set on the shadowy storm. Viren unleashed his next attack with fierce momentum. A blazing column of dark power spiraled toward Apriyuto, tearing through the tiles. The technique, called as Black Flame Slash, roared with destructive power and glowed the surrounding room. Apriyuto waited firm, awestruck for a moment. Despite the violent display before him, he recalled himself of his benefit. His abilities far surpassed what anyone in this world foreseen. His level solo had already exceeded 90, while average soldiers barely reached level 20. Apriyuto had awareness from the initial story to measure against. Even the strongest characters in that world barely touched level 50. Viren's resolve undeniably surpassed that threshold. His bearing solo warped the air, distorting reality with every movement. Apriyuto understood that even with preparation, confronting an opponent of this magnitude demanded more than forces or skill solo. Still, Viren acknowledged his son's resolve. From a parent's view, he respected Apriyuto's progress. However, he pointed out a crucial difference, one shaped by the harshness of battle. Viren's experiences in life-or-death situations had forged him into something more than raw talent could replicate. With fierce conviction, Viren dashed onward and ended the distance between them. The air cracked around him as he yelled his intent to take the offensive. Apriyuto continued steady, set to meet the charge head-on. Their blades collided in a burst of steel and sparks. Viren unleashed a powerful downward strike, forcing Apriyuto to block under immense weight. Each swing carried the weight of experience, while Apriyuto answered with speed and will. Sliding back from the impact, Apriyuto steadied himself just in time. Viren, impressed, commented on his son's power to deflect a blow meant to end the duel. This short pause gave both fighters a second to reassess. Apriyuto widened his eyes as Viren shifted posture. Without caution, the elder warrior launched low and fast, slicing across the tiles in a sweeping arc. The motion took Apriyuto off guard, pushing him into a reactive leap. High above the ground, Apriyuto regained command mid-air. Sword in hand, he aimed to strike back with precision. He locked eyes with his opponent as the distance between them shrank formally more, momentum now tipping in his favor. Viren launched a fierce, sweeping slash aimed directly at Apriyuto. His voice roared across the hall, challenging his son with a full-powered blow. The sheer power of the attack sliced through the air like a hammer. Apriyuto barely dodged in time. The tiles shattered beneath him as the strike landed, leaving a gaping crater. Shards of debris flew in every direction. He gazed toward the destruction, seeing just how wide the gap in raw power truly was. His ideas turned inward. Viren had always moved in the background, protecting the Rhinana Kingdom from the darkness. That quiet resolve now exposed itself in full. Apriyuto had called his father was formidable, but this surpassed all prior awareness. Still, Viren wasn't finished. He acknowledged Apriyuto's skill, commending his defense, but with lifted hands and a battle cry, he announced that this duel was only beginning. Across the space, Apriyuto's demeanor sharpened. He had held back, but now that was over, power awakened behind his eyes. If this battle was far from its end, then it was time for him to stop keeping back and fight seriously. Apriyuto's eyes widened as his reflexes triggered. He reacted swiftly, but Viren was already midair, crossing his blades in preparation for a devastating blow. The speed of his movement left no time to hesitate. Without delay, Apriyuto landed with a powerful upward swing. The attack collided violently, sending a shockwave that burst through the space. Viren's demeanor changed, recognizing the sheer power behind the counterattack. Both were thrown back from the impact, tumbling across the fractured tiles. The clash left cracks in the walls and scattered debris around them. Despite the chaos, neither permitted themselves to waver. A crater began at the center of the room where their blades had met. The stone tiles was destroyed outside acknowledgement, its shattered pieces evidence of the power shared between father and son. As dust settled, Apriyuto slowly lifted his weapon, eyes locked onward. Across from him, Viren crouched low, sweat trailing his brow. Their weapons quivered in hand not from dread, but from the power they remained to endure. The duel had escalated, and both knew the next move could turn the balance entirely. A blade rested inches from Apriyuto's face, its edge quivering under the strain of ended power. The elder warrior, bloodied yet smiling, looked up from the ground, declaring his approval with honor. Apriyuto's widened eyes exposed the weight of those words. He had earned his opponent's acknowledgement. Conviction hardened Apriyuto's gaze as he slowly rose, one knee pressed firmly to the shattered tiles. Across the battlefield, his guide crouched amidst debris, signs of the brutal clash carved into the walls behind him. With a defiant roar, the guide announced the last test. Muscles strained and battered, he pressed Apriyuto to go outside. From across the room, Apriyuto waited quietly, sword in hand, his breathing serious, his will unshaken. Raising one arm to the sky, Apriyuto invoked a forbidden magic. Light cascaded from above as power gathered in his voice. The air quivered as the ancient words summoned something outside ordinary power, his last weapon. Through the divine light, a person appeared. Floating with grace, an armored woman lay suspended in the air. Apriyuto looked on, quiet and awestruck. Apriyuto's demeanor continued resolute as he lifted his arm, summoning the dark power within. Across from him the girl looked on with quiet feeling, her eyes shimmering as the magic started to manifest. Later, in a quiet room, Apriyuto and his father sat across from one another. The battle was over, but questions remained. Viren, his body still closed in bandages, asked the issue weighing heavily on his head. Why had Apriyuto saved him? Looking out the window, Apriyuto provided a steady reply. For someone who had already sacrificed so much for the nation, expecting him to give his life just to pass on a power magic sense wrong. Resuming his gaze to his father, Apriyuto spoke firmly. Power inherited through death held no meaning for him. Sacrificing his own parent for resolve was a price he refused to pay, no matter the reward. Reflections trailed without speaking. The initial Apriyuto would have picked differently, shaped by a world steeped in loss. But this Apriyuto had changed. Death was not anymore a normal part of his life, and that made all the difference. Faced with the reality of his limitations, Apriyuto continued collected. His father recalled him that without death, a spirit contract couldn't be formed, yet Apriyuto answered without delay he had already considered the consequences. Standing firm, Apriyuto made a plain request, allow him to form a contract with the spirit summoned by his father. Though it was not as powerful as the special power, he would accept the spirit's resolve as his inheritance instead. The proposal was firm yet well thought out. He assured his father that the special power could be elapsed on naturally, without sacrifice, once old age stated him. A minor smirk crossed the elder man's face. He approved the outcome of their duel, declaring that the loser must obey the victor. That single line ended the struggle between them, replacing strain with mutual acknowledgement. Apriyuto waited set. His father would summon 3 spirits, and from them, Apriyuto would select. The boy reached his hand without dread. A contract would be formed not through death, but through conviction, and the legacy would begin on his own terms. As the spirit of devotion descended, Apriyuto and his father watched her form nearby. She floated softly, wearing a crown of flowers and a serene demeanor. Her abilities were support-based, enhancing power, increasing resolve, and showing resolute devotion. Curious, Apriyuto attempted to talk to her. Though the spirit could understand him, she was unable to answer. Spirits missed the power to talk in the human realm. A moment of quiet elapsed. With a minor smile, Apriyuto decided to name her himself. He chose the name Toa, sealing the bond with the spirit and giving her an persona to call her own. Before moving onward, Apriyuto sought a simple demonstration. He asked Toa to reduce her size. Obediently, she started to shrink, proving her command and adaptability. Floating nearby, she answered perfectly, her form glowing gently. Viren acknowledged his son's progress. Though the formal inheritance ritual wasn't fulfilled, Apriyuto had earned the power of a contracted spirit. Looking ahead, Viren set the next milestone. In 3 years, upon graduation, Apriyuto's resolve would be tested in the world outside. Tua hovered behind Apriyuto as his father assigned him with the coming of their lineage. Certainty radiated from his demeanor while his chest welcomed the weight of leadership. Conviction would guide him through every upcoming trial. The royal castle of Rhinana Kingdom waited high, its spires piercing the overcast sky with solemn grace. Within its grand halls, Viren faced a known man one thought lost to war and time. They shared a firm handshake, their reunion marked not by celebration, but quiet awareness forged through hardship. Sitting in a room filled with quiet, Viren confessed the weight of his past. Though the throne space continued still, his words lingered. He had survived where people hadn't, even after taking lives his father's among them. The other man, steady yet determined, dismissed Viren's guilt. He recalled him of the Ark family's resolute work. Their legacy, born not from perfection but sacrifice, had brought balance to the kingdom more than any decree. Viren dropped his gaze at Initial, but his eyes soon lifted with clarity. Gratitude replaced sorrow. His friend's acceptance, free from judgment, lit a minor flame within. For the initial time in years, he smiled not as a nobleman, nor a sinner, but as someone given a second chance. Tea was streamed with support as the elder nobleman spoke of his wish. Then he had hoped Michael and Viren could form a bond with Apriyuto, just as their fathers formerly had. Memories of Michael's resentment appeared. Strong honor and jealousy had poisoned any chance at friendship. Even the king recognized Apriyuto's unmatched talent, too exceptional, too remote for someone like Michael to method. Confronting Viren directly, the nobleman proposed a firm idea. He brought up the possibility of a political engagement between Apriyuto and his own daughter Hanyul. Laughter erupted unexpectedly. Then Viren answered not with outrage, but genuine amusement. The suggestion had took him off guard, its weight diluted by the absurdity of timing and circumstance. No longer masking his fatigue, the elder man confessed he had intended to leave everything to Apriyuto. Sorrow laced his words. Meanwhile, Viren reflected quietly. Apriyuto bore the nation's duties, never complaining, always behind the events carrying out what people wouldn't. That kind of loyalty, over time, corrodes even the strongest will. Worry settled on the nobleman's face as he spoke of Apriyuto's coming. Formerly Apriyuto became head of the clan, loyalty to the royal house might fade. Viren, steady yet determined, provided a firm conclusion. Without proper acknowledgement or reward from the royal clan, Apriyuto had no reason to remain in its shadow. What had formerly been a tradition of quiet sacrifice would end with Viren's generation. Outside the shifting world of nobleman expectations, the Rhinana Royal Academy waited undisturbed. Its grand halls lingered with voices of the new generation students unaware of the political weight shifting outside their studies. Cobblestone streets bustled with carriages and conversation. Bridges extended between buildings as ordinary citizens carried on with regular lives. Few observed how the foundation of royal control had begun to crack, not through rebellion, but retreat. Apriyuto prepared to depart without speaking. A civil farewell met him at the carriage doorway. Responding with measured grace, he provided no complaint. Task continued for now, but something in his eyes indicated that decision not obligation would define his next step. Apriyuto walked at the front, his gaze steady, surrounded by peers who mutual his route. Behind him, friends from distinct backgrounds trailed nearby, each marked by quiet anticipation and unspoken will. Before the towering academy building, the group gathered to hear the explanation for the day's entrance exam. Chris walked onward with command. Details came quickly: power, close combat, and written tests would determine student placement. Based on performance, they would be sorted into 4 distinct classes. Instructions had already been sent to helping members to avoid underperformance that might hinder Apriyuto. He remained with more warnings. This year's enrollment would include formidable individuals, Prince Michael, and the descendants of the hero and saint. Expectations weren't light. Everyone present was recalled not to tarnish Apriyuto's reputation, especially in front of such distinguished rivals. Last encouragement was sought. Apriyuto, steady yet assertive, answered without delay. He gave no lecture, only a short control. Weight didn't cloud his words. He asked for effort, not perfection. That solo awakened certainty. With voices united, the people lingered, his will set to face whatever came next. A steady person in black robes waited near the cathedral steps. Chris leaned closer, pointing her out. Apriyuto trailed his gaze toward the woman with the veil, dignified and collected. Her gaze had weight. Chris noted the unusual aura she carried, something that set her apart from the crowd. Slight but undeniable, it remained in the air like a quiet caution. Memories appeared. She was Elizabeth, the saintess mentioned in the initial story. Called not for direct combat, but for her crucial healing skill, she kept the hero alive through countless battles. While warriors fought, she kept them moving with regeneration and charisma. Despite her kind appearance, Elizabeth held dangerous capacity. Though she rarely left the church, her bearing shifted fates. Naive about worldly affairs, perhaps, but her emotive sway over people made her just as threatening as the battlefield hero himself. Another person appeared, Lady Alicia, the hero's fiancée. Solo and quiet, she waited apart. Ideas swirled in Apriyuto's head. If left unchecked, Alicia might fall under the same heroic control. Something required to shift. Standing in spot would not anymore suffice. News spread quickly. Unlike the people, the hero would not arrive. As a special candidate, he was exempt from the entrance exam. That absence left a strange gap in the air, like a quiet shadow over the day's incidents. Apriyuto watched Alicia from a distance. Her kind smile masked something hidden. Without the hero by her side, weight would increase. Despite being treated as nobles, the hero's commoner background created strain, and Alicia would likely bear the weight of that divide. Crowds gathered in front of the academy steps. Examinees waited in rows, lined up for instructions. A voice addressed them all, properly opening the day's trial. No delay continued. Everything now depended on performance. Explanations trailed quickly. Each student would be assessed on power, swordplay, and movement. Tests would be private and public, viewed not only by power but composure. Rules concluded the meeting. Matches would end only upon intervention or if someone left the arena's bounds. Until then, each participant was to wait quietly for their name. Nothing more was said. As the quiet grew heavier, anticipation took root. The moment her name was called, the girl walked onward with certainty. Without delay, mystic spikes erupted from beneath her feet. Sparks crackled as power swelled through the ground in vertical bursts. Her opponent staggered back. Attempting to rush onward, he found the terrain blocked by growing pillars. Attacks came fast and unrelenting, forcing distance between them. Movement became impossible. Retreat the only option. Spectators watched nearby. Chris and Apriyuto waited without speaking as the fighters struggled to break through. A strike landed, but he continued trapped within the jagged barrier. Dust flared as he swung with growing irritation. Another charge failed. He yelled again, his voice echoing with anger. She continued steady, hand outstretched mid-spell. From the side, comments were made she'd plainly improved from earlier practice. Her technique now rivaled those twice her age. The boy was launched backward, skidding across the stone tiles. Cheers and gasps erupted in waves. Her progress hadn't gone unnoticed. Someone commented it was foreseen talent combined with serious guidance always produced results. Among those watching, Apriyuto's smile remained, unspoken honor in his demeanor. The announcer's voice lingered through the arena. Lady Cruel waited victorious, her opponent lying unconscious past the boundary. With the match settled by ring-out, her resolve had been formally recognized in front of the entire crowd. Resuming to the seats, she climbed the steps swiftly. Her eyes searched for Apriyuto, locking onto him the moment she spotted his person. Respectfully she bowed and addressed him with honor. Acknowledgement faced her. Gratitude filled her demeanor. Praise from Apriyuto left a stronger impression than any public recognition. For her this wasn't simply about winning, it was about proving herself worthy of the name she trailed. Even as her hands quivered, she held onto her words with joy. The feeling couldn't be secret. She clutched her face, overcome by praise. Apriyuto's approval meant more than any score or technique. Her joy bubbled over, leaving no space for composure. Chris provided his congratulations, but she barely observed. Her notice continued set on Apriyuto. Encouragement was shared, but the difference in response was plain. Where Chris received a nod, Apriyuto was met with stars in her eyes. Lady Cruel's eyes sparkled with interest. With the next round approaching, she pondered aloud who Apriyuto would face. Possibilities flew, perhaps a nobleman from Duke Noir's clan, or even Alicia of Marquis Mirai's line. Chris chimed in thoughtfully. The upper-class exam pool consisted mostly of noblemen, small ladies. Barring those from the Noir or Arc families, the choices seemed few. He added, half-joking, that even the saintess could be a candidate. As the announcer announced Apriyuto's name, the moment arrived. Backing flowed from both sides. With eager voices, Chris and Cruel cheered Apriyuto on, their faith plain. All notice shifted toward the dueling stage. Expectations weighed heavily, yet Apriyuto continued collected. Whispers erupted from the crowd. The Noir family's name carried reputation and worry. Onlookers remembered past trouble involving them at royal gatherings. Then the name lingered, Tristan Noir, a person not prominent in the initial story, yet shrouded in dangerous claims. Allegedly, his power outclassed his kin's, though his bearing in past incidents had been minimal. Called as the Noir family's black sheep, Tristan's part now became a mystery one with unpredictable consequences. Serious footsteps lingered across the arena tiles. Apriyuto turned, expecting his opponent, but something sensed wrong. His eyes narrowed. The response from Cruel and Chris verified it. This wasn't what any of them anticipated. As Apriyuto walked onto the platform, he observed not one, but three individuals present. Alicia Mirai, Saintess Elizabeth, and an unfamiliar small man waited in formation. Uncertainty rippled through the crowd. Observing from the sidelines, many struggled to understand. Whispers spread. Was this a mistake? Three capacity candidates waited quietly. Each held a distinct state: a noble lady, a holy person, and a mysterious male from the Noir clan. With a confident tone, the man walked onward. Introducing himself as Tristan Noir, he provided courteous greetings to each of the participants, including Apriyuto. The strain grew heavier. Apriyuto's sharp gaze locked onto Tristan as he calmly sought clarification from the examiner. Alicia described the circumstance. Because the Saintess focused on supportive abilities rather than direct combat, the examiners decided to change the format. One-on-one duels wouldn't measure her value. Despite rules mandating solo battles, an exception was made. Apriyuto waited at the edge of the dueling platform, strain hanging in the air. The crowd's murmurs quieted as a serious footstep lingered. Everyone turned as a person approached with ordering bearing. Before him waited three known figures: Alicia Mirai, the Saintess Elizabeth, and Tristan Noir. The audience murmured louder now, recognizing the prominent names. Eyes locked on each participant as the examiner walked onward to clarify the circumstance. Whispers spread. Someone mentioned the Noir clan. Alicia's name was spoken with delay, and Saintess Elizabeth was acknowledged with quiet reverence. Uncertainty spread among the observers, unclear what this group's gathering could mean during a mock battle. Tristan identified himself with a smug grin, addressing Alicia, the Saintess, and Apriyuto by name. His attitude drew wary glances. Apriyuto, unconvinced, sought an explanation. The examiner exposed the challenge. Because of the Saintess's support-based part, a standard one-on-one format was deemed unfair. A new arrangement was announced: a two-on-two battle. Apriyuto and Alicia were paired against Tristan and the Saintess. Alicia grew rattled, unclear of her abilities, while Apriyuto, masking a smirk, approved the pairing calmly. The arena buzzed with anticipation as the judge announced a special two-on-two battle. Apriyuto Arc waited firm, awaiting the announcement of his partner. Strain filled the air while the audience leaned in for the names. Alicia Mirai's name trailed Apriyuto's, pairing the two together. Across from them waited Tristan Noir and the Saintess, forming the opposing team. Alicia appeared shocked by the revelation, while Apriyuto calmly took in the circumstance. Apriyuto analyzed the pairings. Being with Alicia was advantageous. He could observe the Saintess' abilities without direct interference. Meanwhile, Alicia seemed overcome, doubtful of how to answer. Their partnership started with awkward presentations as Alicia shyly identified herself. Planning started swiftly. Apriyuto described that he would fight up close while Alicia supported him with power from a distance. He outlined a direct method. She would target Tristan until he got within range of his sword. Alicia wavered but agreed. Despite Alicia's suggestion to help more directly, Apriyuto rejected the idea. He preferred one-on-one confrontations, refusing to rely on numerical benefit. Even with the Saintess aiding Tristan, Apriyuto believed in fair combat. The girl dropped her head, clutching her chest as guilt weighed heavily on her. She had wrongly viewed Apriyuto's deeds and now realized her mistake. Acknowledging her misunderstanding, she apologized earnestly, expressing sorrow with sincerity scarce among nobles. Resolute to make things right, she turned back toward the center of the arena, her voice confident and plain. Apriyuto continued collected behind her as she called out to fight with honor. Hearing her resolve, he calmly approved her lead and agreed to proceed without hesitation, set to backing her verdict. Before stepping onto the field, Apriyuto made one condition plain: she must not aim at the Saintess. She agreed, wearing a smile, gently pleased by the reminder. With both sides prepared and the crowd watching nearby, the signal to start was given without delay. Apriyuto dashed onward the moment the match started, his posture low and rapid. His movements reflected refined practice and sharp intent, marking him as a capable combatant. His opponent answered quickly. A fireball ignited in her hand, the flames swirling with raw power. With no delay, she launched her initial attack. The Saintess walked onward, calm and collected, her hands lifted in preparation. Upon request, she triggered backing spells, initial enhancing defense, then triggering automatic healing. Her quiet blessing enveloped Apriyuto, granting him divine resilience before he came into the clash again. Without caution, the fireball landed its mark. Blazes exploded across his body, engulfing the area in thick smoke. The blast lingered through the arena as onlookers held their breath in anticipation of the outcome. Amid the smoke, a person started to reappear. Though visibly glowed, Apriyuto appeared without delay. Across the field, the girl celebrated prematurely, believing her power had succeeded. However, Apriyuto continued steady, refuting her assumption without words. His boots slammed into the ground, propelling him onward formally more. Despite hurt etched across his face, he forced through without slowing down. Grit replaced delay as he focused entirely on advancing. Explosions erupted around him, yet Apriyuto pressed on. The girl, shocked, watched his method with disbelief. Even as attacks rained down on him, he charged ahead undeterred. His planning was not defense, it was pure, resolute will. Mistrust crept into the observer's head as he watched the battle unfold. Focus sharpened not on the fighters but on the saintess standing nearby. Her bearings suddenly sensed too involved, her control no longer passive. Hands clasped, she softly maintained a magic. Incitement, a skill capable of suppressing dread, shimmered beneath her serene smile. Suspicion turned into alarm. This wasn't just healing backing. Something hidden, possibly dangerous, was at play behind her steady demeanor. The duel escalated outside command as one combatant charged relentlessly, ignoring injuries and shouts to stop. Spectators were worried by the unnatural persistence, while a girl suspected mystic manipulation. Watching from above, Apriyuto quietly verified her dread. The fighter had been took in the grip of a dangerous ability, the saintess's skill, incitement, a magic that erases dread and drives the body onward no matter the peril. Amid the chaos, Apriyuto descended the stairs with steady precision. The enemy's blades slashed through the air, but his steps never faltered. Stepping into the arena, Apriyuto faced the careless swordsman. The crowd fell into a hushed strain. His opponent, recognizing him, let out a mocking laugh and welcomed him with theatrical style. His opponent reveled in the circumstance, hands spread wide. Tales of Apriyuto's resolve had spread, and now the challenger wished to see if reality matched the claims. Certainty overflowed in every movement as the challenger prepared to engage him fully. Apriyuto's gaze continued steady. He assessed the danger with a steady, piercing stare. Across from him, the challenger grinned, speaking of fate and chance. To him this duel was a gift, the perfect opportunity to measure himself against the strongest. Excitement swelled through the challenger's demeanor, his face twisting with manic delight. The thrill of confronting Apriyuto in battle overcome him, revealing his true hunger for struggle. Madness laced his grin as he savored the moment. With no caution, the enemy lunged, sword lifted high, and aimed to strike with lethal power. Apriyuto waited unshaken, gaze locked onward, rejecting the theatrics. He muttered calmly that his foe talked too much. Right before steel met steel in a brutal clash, blades collided mid-air, sending sparks across the arena. Neither combatant backed down. Apriyuto held firm, countering every blow with rapid precision. Despite the barrage, he maintained command of his posture. From the sidelines, a girl watched with growing worry. Her eyes reflected worry, but she couldn't intervene. Nearby, the saintess watched quietly, lips coiled in a serene smile. On the battlefield, the fight intensified. The challenger pressed onward, declaring his thrill while Apriyuto blocked another blow. An abrupt turn in tactics came as the opponent lashed out violently. He mocked Apriyuto, questioning his endurance and asking if the hurt had finally set in. Without pause, he prepared another move, wrapping his hand tightly around the sword hilt, set to escalate the assault more. The attacker's blade slashed close, causing Apriyuto's hair to whip violently in the air. His opponent taunted him, thrilled by the near hit. There was no pause, just intensity in every strike and provocation. Quickly reassessing, Apriyuto observed something unusual in his opponent's movements. Several distinct techniques appeared to blend seamlessly. His head raced. Had this man trained across multiple sword styles? Meanwhile, the enemy crouched with excitement, set to leap in again. Both fighters kept their distance briefly. The challenger, energized by the stalemate, honored Apriyuto's performance. He announced the moment historic and indicated commemorating the duel like a mutual milestone. The mood grew bizarre, as strain varied with chaotic humor. Annoyed, Apriyuto muttered at the absurd suggestion. Nearby, Alicia, the blonde girl, watched the exchange with anxious hands clutched to her chest. Her worry deepened, yet she continued on the sidelines. A smug glance from the opponent implied at hidden plans outside battle. The challenger pressed again with renewed vigor, While clashing blades, he threw out a mocking suggestion that Apriyuto should fight alongside Alicia. According to him, only then might Apriyuto remain a chance. The words sliced hidden than the blade, aimed to provoke both warrior and observer. Apriyuto deflected another swing, and quickly gained distance. He countered the earlier taunt with sharp reasoning, pointing out that despite the Saintess and mystic backing, his opponent still fought solo. Double-teaming, he argued, would be a dishonorable way to will the fight. In response, the challenger broke into uncontrollable laughter. The idea of honor only fueled his amusement. He waited high, voice echoing across the arena, entirely unbothered by Apriyuto's logic or code. With a grin still lingering, he confessed that Apriyuto was indeed something special. However, a turn in tone signaled more to come. His fingers tightened around the hilt, and his demeanor turned sharper. Compliments faded, replaced by the weight of something darker. Beyond the no delay, the challenger lunged. Words burst from him as he charged. He warned Apriyuto not to use nobles as an excuse if he lost. Certainty glowed in his eyes, body propelled onward with full power. Steel clashed again with violent power. The impact lingered across the arena as the two warriors met head-on. In the background, Alicia watched intently. The Saintess continued still, while the spectators fell quiet. All eyes continued on the escalating duel, with no plain victor in sight. Alicia's chest throbbed as she watched the fight unfold. Her voice took in her throat. She whispered in disbelief, unable to look away. Something within her shifted, though she didn't yet fully understand what it meant. From another angle, the Saintess calmly assessed the duel. She noted that Tristan, the challenger, wasn't just capable. He belonged to the famed Kako clan, warriors of high renown. With her mystic buff, he should have been nearly unmatched. The tide of battle didn't slow. With speed and precision, Apriyuto launched a fierce counterattack. His eyes narrowed, and his blade landed with sharp command. Tristan's grin faltered momentarily, took off guard by the abrupt turn in pace. Apriyuto spun with fluid motion, feet gliding over the arena tiles. Observers stared in awe as his form moved flawlessly. The elegance of his swordplay drew respect even from those who came only to spectate. This wasn't just a match of resolve, it was artistry in motion. Undeterred, Tristan retaliated with raw power. He swept his blade across the stone, sending debris into the air. Sparks lit up the arena as his strike met the ground. Apriyuto answered immediately, refusing to yielding a single inch of ground. Apriyuto waited on the castle terrace, when his gaze locked onto a known person in the distance. The sight caused a jolt through his composure. Across the grounds, the woman in ceremonial robes walked onward, unmistakably Saintess Elizabeth. Before delay could take root, Elizabeth dashed toward the battlefield with resolute eyes. Her arrival cut through the uncertainty. Without pause, she provided her resolute backing to Tristan, who had assumed position at the front line. Elizabeth lifted her hands with solemn grace. Light radiated outward as she invoked a sacred blessing. The glow swelled into Tristan's form, enveloping him with resolve and divine power. Recognizing the gift, he tightened his weapon tighter and gave her a respectful nod of gratitude. A transformation sparked within him. Bolstered by divine power, Tristan charged with explosive momentum. His body swelled with vitality, each motion sharper than the last. Certainty lit up his demeanor as his empowered assault drove him closer to the enemy's defenses. Despite the crushing power, Apriyuto watched calmly from across the field. While Tristan's resolve and speed had swelled, his command wavered. The boost made him faster, but not smarter. Every step onward was met with equally precise counters. Blades clashed violently as Tristan forced his resolve to the limit, but his swings continued wild. Apriyuto parried with minimal effort, his sharp eyes observing every gap. Their coordination faltered, exposing the flaw of inexperience between Saintess and warrior. From a distance, Elizabeth watched the match with worry. Though the enhancement power granted temporary resolve, it missed finesse. Her ideas drifted to darker possibilities. What if this power was applied to entire armies? Such capacity, if misused, could plunge realms into chaos. Tristan launched another furious strike, lightning trailing his blade. Apriyuto held firm, unmoved by the onslaught. He taunted calmly, observing Tristan's fading rhythm. Meanwhile, Elizabeth contemplated more dread suppression power combined with this power could render even the weakest soldier unstoppable. A firm verdict settled in Apriyuto's head. He had seen enough careless charging and clumsy technique. Raising his sword with no delay, he shifted his posture, eyes narrowing. It was time to demonstrate the difference between raw power and controlled resolve. Before Tristan could recover, Apriyuto landed with measured precision. His sword carved through the air, closing the distance instantly. Tristan's demeanor twisted in alarm, unable to answer. Tristan's body flew backward from the impact, his blade slipping from his grip. The tiles cracked beneath him as he crashed violently, dust and shards scattering. Apriyuto continued still, his steady gaze tracking every movement with unshaken focus. Hurt rippled across Tristan's face as he cried out, shards digging into his skin, his vision blurred under the power, unable to sequence the gap in resolve between them. Even with divine backing, the reality of battle was brutally plain. Gasps lingered from the onlookers as Apriyuto walked onward, voice collected. Elizabeth and another observer stopped in spot, shocked by the abrupt outcome. Tristan lay motionless on the ground, receiving his opponent's assessment without boldness. Without conceit, Apriyuto provided a challenge for the coming. He proposed a proper duel at the academy, one without interruptions or assistance. His tone carried neither mockery nor honor, only the desire to face someone who might one day rival him. Still resting against the wall, Tristan managed a weary smile. He acknowledged the fact without bitterness. Seeing the resolve gap, he approved it not as defeat, but as motivation. Resolute eyes rose again, set to chase the resolve he had just witnessed. The duel reached its conclusion with steady finality. Tristan, still slumped against the fractured wall, lifted his voice and approved defeat. Apriyuto continued collected, sword dropped, while Elizabeth walked forward silently, signaling her withdrawal without resistance. Applause erupted throughout the arena as the announcer announced the victors Arc and Mirai. The match had ended, and the crowd answered with roaring approval. Their performance had left an undeniable impact on everyone watching. As Apriyuto walked off the stage, Mirai called out in surprise, trying to catch up. Her eyes trailed him nearby, strain mixing with respect. She wavered, her ideas racing while he disappeared into the exit hallway, unaffected by the praise. Left behind, Mirai clutched her chest, uncertain and overcome. Worry clouded her face as she whispered uncertainty to herself. The weight of the moment remained something had changed. Meanwhile, darker ideas appeared elsewhere. A student named Ardo glowed with resentment, vowing to destroy the Arc clan. Fueled by prejudice and claims, he saw Apriyuto as the embodiment of villainy. If a clash occurred at the academy, it would ignite more than just rivalry. Mirai, seeing Ardo's intentions, shivered. This wasn't just about competition anymore, it could spark chaos. The looming cathedral tower waited against the sky as ideas hurried through Mirai's head. She tightened her fists, resolute to move. Without delay, she resolved to warn Arto before anything escalated outside command. Elsewhere, the Arc clan gathered in full splendor. The grand hall brimmed with nobles, light chatter and lifted glasses. Apriyuto waited among them, quiet but focused, as eyes turned his way with measured interest and deference. Standing before his peers, Apriyuto addressed them with measured tone. He honored their tireless practice and acknowledged their dedication. Though the academy stated equality, he recalled them that state still shaped every outcome regardless of merit. His words turned serious. Apriyuto pressed them to uphold their legacy, not through conceit but through resolve. The Arc name carried weight, and now more than ever they required to prove its value with will and unity. Among the group, junior members reflected with honor and irritation. For years people had scorned the Arc clan as unclean and dishonorable, yet it was they who took on duties people rejected. They hugged the part no one else dared play, swearing to demonstrate their resolve in the days to come regardless of public disdain. Apriyuto's voice rang plain with resolve. He made no excuses for his family's reputation. If the world insisted on labeling them villains for doing the duties people refused, then he would carry that title with honor without shame or sorrow. Clutching the insignia on his outfit, he confirmed what truly mattered. Some of their deeds may have been unglamorous, yet lives had been saved as a result. No matter how people viewed them, he continued proud to be an Arc. Before the gathered group, Apriyuto asked a pointed issue. Why were they mocked, rejected, and vilified despite their sacrifices? The crowd fell quiet, seeing the weight of his words. Their deeds were misjudged, their motives dismissed. A small girl answered confidently. Their handling stemmed from a single brutal assumption flaw. It wasn't about ethics or tradition. The world simply believed the Arc clan wasn't tough enough to matter, and that belief fueled the scorn. Then Apriyuto lifted his voice one last time. This was not the end, but a beginning. They would overturn every misconception, prove every critic wrong, and reveal exactly what their clan was capable of. United, resolute, they would rise no longer quiet in the darkness. The space fell quiet as the Arc children gathered before Apriyuto. Their eyes met his with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. He waited firm, radiating command. This moment would define their route onward. Strain gripped the junior ones, who quivered under weight, but Apriyuto announced them changed, not any more weaklings deserving scorn. Their past doubts had no spot here. It was time to remain high and prove their worth. Without power, he warned, even villains would be crushed beneath the weight of so-called justice. Resolve was not optional. It was the only shield against judgment. If they wished to leave ridicule, they had to rise, together. Resolute, Apriyuto pledged to lead from the front. He pressed each of them to take honor in their name, even if society labeled them as villains. Their heritage wasn't a curse, it was a challenge to overcome. United will filled the space. From the Grand Estate's halls, a powerful cry lingered, "Yes, sir! No delay, no retreat." The Arc clan had reclaimed their dignity. Now, they marched onward to reveal their honor, their persona, and their resolve. A legacy reborn not through words but action. With newfound unity, the group advanced with certainty, their will firm after countless tests. Each step lingered conviction and purpose. No hesitation remained in their eyes as they marched onward, set to carve their legacy through action and resolute resolve. At the Grand Arc residence, Apriyuto prepared for his initial day at the prestigious Rhinana Royal Academy. Carrying his suitcase with steady composure, he reflected on the expectations tied to his nobleman state. The mansion's quiet corridors lingered his conviction as he readied himself for the entrance ceremony. Within the hall, two loyal servants, Maria and Wool, faced their master's commands. Apriyuto assigned them duties with measured command, instructing them to manage his belongings and keep the residence in order. Outside the manor walls, the Grand Academy faced. Towers and bridges of stone waited as symbols of elite education and rivalry among nobles. Apriyuto intended meticulously, ensuring Maria and Wool would join him starting the next day to assist in his studies and affairs. His carriage arrived at the academy courtyard, pulling murmurs from gathered students. The ornate black design and clan crest exposed his persona instantly. Whispers spread, curious and wary of the small aristocrats bearing among them. Apriyuto walked out gracefully, pulling every gaze toward him. Nearby students whispered while people straightened their posture. Among the crowd, coming allies and rivals watched the man who carried both noble honor and secret ambition. Reaching before the academy gates, Apriyuto Arc strode onward with an unshaken demeanor. His steady yet ordering bearing silenced idle chatter around him. Students instantly recognized the small nobleman whose name carried both respect and apprehension. Whispers spread among onlookers, their interest laced with worry. Many questioned how the Arc household, long regarded as minor nobles, could arrive so formidable now. Each step of his entourage exuded certainty that seemed far outside their rank. Rumors circulated rapidly through the courtyard. Some spoke of hidden dealings and violent associations surrounding the Arc clan. The inclusion of dreaded individuals and famed social figures only deepened uncertainty. No one could discern whether these stories were false exaggerations or veiled fact. Apriyuto's sharp gaze cut through the murmuring crowd. The crushing air around him sensed tangible, silencing more speculation. For a moment the line between rumor and reality blurred, and many realized that the power radiating from him could not be ordinary. He remained onward, every movement deliberate and resolute. The weight of countless eyes pressed on him, yet his will never wavered. To him, initial opinions shaped destiny, and his would define how the academy viewed the Arc household from this day onward. Apriyuto considered the weight of his family's reputation as he came into the academy courtyard. Protecting those under his support was more than task, it was planning. Allowing people to underestimate him or his followers would only invite peril. Gathering his allies, he commanded them to remain united under the Arc banner. Conviction spread through their group as his voice resonated across the courtyard. Students nearby stopped, sensing the sheer command emanating from his words. The Arc household's will could not anymore be questioned. Whispers of dread and respect spread quickly among other students. Some mocked from the sidelines, but people sensed genuine worry. Despite their bravado, no one dared method the group that now carried such an intimidating bearing within the academy walls. Stories resurfaced, tales of a student who formally challenged Apriyuto and nearly paid with his life. Whether exaggerated or not, the rumor added fuel to his growing legend. Each passing moment solidified his dominance within this unfamiliar environment. The towering spires of the academy hung above as his name lingered among quivering voices. From that day onward, everyone would remember the Arc faction and its unshakable leader, Apriyuto Arc, whose ambition promised to reshape the academy's hierarchy entirely. The academy's great hall filled with tense quiet as students faced rank assignments. Among them, anxious glances darted toward Apriyuto's followers. The weight surrounding their nobleman faction was enough to make even confident students uneasy. When one of Apriyuto's retainers was placed in a lesser rank, whispers spread instantly. The Arc household members viewed it as an insult, their honor wounded by the academy's verdict. Still, steady discipline prevailed as they faced their leader's response. Lady Oriana, ever bright and loyal, lifted spirits with her radiant smile. Declaring her devotion to Apriyudo, she swore to work him with resolute dedication. Her words rekindled honor among the group, restoring certainty after the earlier awkwardness. As names remained to echo through the hall, Apriyudo watched his companion's success. Oriana and Mist were both assigned to rank A, recalling their skill and his control. Their achievements strengthened the Arc faction's growing prestige within the academy. Mist, modest and collected, attributed her success to Apriyudo's guidance. Her humility impressed even their rivals, confirming the Arc faction's unity and discipline. Within that crowded hall, Apriyudo's leadership formally again shaped the image of an unbreakable household tied by loyalty and purpose. Apriyudo watched as Oriana Festa laughed carelessly, her certainty radiating among the new students. Her carefree attitude differed sharply with his restrained bearing, yet her words cut through the air, dismissive and sharp. Beneath that teasing smile, he noticed a deliberate challenge, a test of composure in a world ruled by honor. The academy's grand hall filled with applause as the principal addressed the gathering. His words carried command, welcoming every nobleman and scholar into the kingdom's most prestigious institution. Apriyudo listened without speaking, observing how easily power and courtesy intertwined beneath the surface of ceremony. Rhinana Royal Academy waited as a fortress of learning and hierarchy. Every spire and courtyard reflected centuries of nobleman tradition. Here, youths of 15 were shaped into coming leaders, their worth measured by blood and ambition rather than virtue. Within these walls, noblemen ranked defined opportunity. True capability, however, resolute survival. Even among privilege, merit demanded proof. Apriyudo understood this balance well, his lineage provided state. Mikkel Rhinana's words concluded with grace, his words embodying the academy's ideals. Applause trailed, but Apriyudo's gaze stayed set onward. The ceremony marked a beginning not of friendship or honor, but of quiet will to rise above the part fate had assigned him. Mikkel Rhinana's confident words lingered through the hall, each sentence crafted to inspire loyalty and ambition. His smile carried the weight of nobles, introducing a flawless image of honor and purpose. From the audience, Apriyudo watched, his demeanor unreadable as the applause swelled around him. The words grew louder, calling for unity among students destined to work the kingdom. Mikkel's message resonated with the audience, his charisma undeniable. Yet behind those words, Apriyudo noticed planning a measured attempt to win hearts before the real battle started. Eyes bright with resolve, Mikkel announced the goal of resolve. The crowd admired his will, unaware of the quiet strain that brewed beneath civil applause. To them it was a moment of hope. To Apriyudo, a reminder of rivalry closed in ceremony. The hall filled with respect as Mikkel concluded, proclaiming courage against evil. Apriyudo's gaze hardened, meeting the speakers with quiet boldness. Applause thundered formally more, but to him, those claps marked the start of competition, not celebration. Outside the stage, fact appeared. Words of praise turned sharp as accusations. Mikkel confronted Apriyudo's intentions, exposing ambition and distrust. The air thickened with rivalry, and beneath collected smiles, both nobles understood their paths would soon collide. Ibsoralito's demeanor hardened as old memories resurfaced. The title of Crown Prince formally defined him, yet that honor had been stripped away. Even so, Apriyudo's persistence remained in his head a shadow refusing to fade. His steady bearing hid worry as he pondered the unfinished rivalry between them. Meanwhile, Apriyudo waited amidst ideas of destiny intertwining with chaos. The rise of heroes, saints, and fallen royalty lingered through his awareness. Though the world's story moved according to unseen patterns, he refused to let fate dictate his route. A smirk crossed Absoralito's lips, certainty replacing restraint. He envisioned himself triumphing above all people, the rightful heir restored through will solo. Ambition glowed behind his collected gaze. In his chest, defeat was not an option. Carriages lined the cobblestone, marking departures for remote tasks. Among them, Apriyudo readied for a journey that promised both challenge and discovery, unaware of the schemes already set in motion behind his back. Within the carriage, reflections danced on the glass as ideas clouded his head. The unfolding story pressed onward, dragging him toward doubtful conflicts. Watching the city fade, Apriyudo pondered how much command he truly had over the story yet to be written. Within the carriage, Apriyudo reflected on his position. The weight of destiny pressed heavily on his ideas. Though he knew the importance of following the world's route, obedience to its flow sensed wrong. Conviction settled in his eyes, born from the desire to command his own narrative. Across from him, Maria and Wool shared worried glances. Their small master's quiet awakened worry, though neither dared to interrupt. When he finally spoke, his collected tone eased their worry, masking the private storm beneath steady reasoning. Apriyudo dismissed their worry with practiced composure, redirecting the focus toward the day ahead. After a moment of pause, he issued plain instructions. The servant's tasks would now include escorting him to the academy and preparing meals. Every word carried quiet command, a reflection of discipline shaped by nobleman upbringing. Both listened attentively, sensing purpose behind his practical commands. Awareness his intentions, Maria's smile warmed while Wool nodded shyly. Their loyalty was evident, yet respect framed their obedience. For them, supporting Apriyuto wasn't mere obligation, it was devotion built from respect and faith. As morning light broke through the gates, Apriyuto walked onward flanked by Maria and Wool. Their steps lingered in harmony, symbolizing a steady beginning before chaos. The academy courtyard bustled with life as Apriyuto shared short greetings with senior nobles. Each face held ambition, their smiles masking quiet competition. Though civil in tone, his responses carried restraint, keeping people at a comfortable distance. The day's lessons hung ahead, but his focus continued deliberate and collected. As the group came into the grounds, Apriyuto stopped, giving plain commands to Maria and Wool. They were to stay behind until mealtime, a simple directive rooted in discipline. The servants bowed respectfully, awareness the unspoken rule that task came before support. Formally separated, Wool's interest overflowed. The academy's grand halls and lively students left her wide-eyed with wonder. Every intricate point of the spot fascinated her, from the towering walls to the vibrant laughter echoing across the courtyard. Maria's laughter warmed the moment. Watching Wool's excitement recalled her of earlier days when work still sensed new. Her words, though playful, carried genuine warmth. Awkwardness colored Wool's cheeks as she confessed her wish to grow stronger, to become worthy of Apriyuto's faith. Though her voice quivered, sincerity filled every word. Maria smiled knowingly, recognizing the spark of loyalty that would one day define the girl's resolve. Maria's kind voice tried to ease Wool's nervousness. She spoke with assurance, insisting that Apriyuto likely paid no heed to her maid's clumsy words. Her steady bearing brought a sense of warmth, though Wool's awkwardness remained, caught between admiration and self-consciousness. Their conversation was interrupted by an abrupt shout. A small nobleman approached with pressure, his demeanor sharp and filled with recognition. Maria blinked in surprise, while Wool instinctively tensed beside her. His words came fast, revealing familiarity neither maid understood. The stranger pointed directly at Wool, exclaiming about a martial arts tournament. Uncertainty swept over her, unable to recall what he meant. Maria's brow furrowed as she walked onward protectively, her reflexes sharpened by years of work. A short quiet trailed as their eyes met. The small noble's alarm deepened when he saw her face plainly. Wool's tail twitched nervously, her wide eyes mirroring his shocked realization. For a passing moment, the world around them seemed to pause. Breaking the stillness, Wool crossed her hands with uncertainty. Her wary demeanor replaced surprise as she questioned his intentions. Maria waited softly beside her, observing the stranger's flustered response, unclear whether this encounter marked trouble or fate taking another unexpected turn. Wool turned abruptly, keeping her composure as she excused herself. Task came before explanation, and she refused to linger under a stranger's confused gaze. Maria trailed nearby, her calm steps concealing readiness to intervene should the small noble move rashly. The boy's voice called after her, frantic and insistent. His hand extended out as if to stop her departure. Wool, however, remained onward, with a steady rhythm, unwilling to indulge interest or confrontation. Before his hand could range her, Maria's reflexes took grip. She intercepted his grasp, her movements rapid and precise. The abrupt contact drew gasps from both sides as the courtyard's steady broke into shock power. Even Wool, took mid-turn, stopped in disbelief. Maria's sharp tone cut through the air, her command undeniable. She reprimanded the small nobleman for his impropriety, reminding him of the Ark household's state. Her words carried the weight of discipline, every syllable icy yet dignified, requiring instant respect. The nobleman winced as her grip tightened, resolve betraying her elegant form. His alarm turned to alarm as realization set in. This was no ordinary maid. Beneath grace and poise lay power honed by years of loyalty and unyielding will. The commotion drew notice from nearby students, forming a curious crowd. The small nobleman struggled to defend himself, insisting his intentions were harmless. His words only worsened the misunderstanding, and Maria's piercing tones silenced the courtyard formally more, her composure resolute even under watchful eyes. Before tensions escalated more, a small woman approached, worry written across her face. She identified herself as the noble's partner, vouching for his character. Her explanation warmed the atmosphere, though Maria's demeanor continued icy. The girl, introducing herself as Alicia, apologized deeply on behalf of her partner. Her formality differed with the boy's anxious quiet. Kneeling faintly, she promised to reprimand him later, frantic to preserve dignity amidst the onlookers. Maria, unshaken, identified herself as a servant of the Ark household, introducing Wool beside her. The names shared carried weight, bridging command and etiquette. Alicia answered politely, revealing both her persona and the boy's name Ardo, the cause of this accidental uproar. With the circumstance resolved, Maria ended the exchange properly. Her promise to report the incident to her owner left Alicia locked in alarm. As the servants departed, the courtyard fell quiet again, leaving behind whispers of uncertainty and awe at the Ark household's reputation. Realization landed Ardo like lightning as Alicia collapsed beside him. He connected the name Ark household with its immense reputation, dread sinking into his stomach. Alarm replaced his earlier boldness as he hurried to steady her, sweat beading on his forehead. The circumstance had escalated outside misunderstanding, pivotal into something far greater than either had anticipated. Scenes later, the academy lingered with a furious voice that rattled its towering halls. The repercussions of Ardo's deeds spread rapidly, marking the start of a turbulent school term. Whispers of scandal filled the air while remote figures hurried about. What started as a simple encounter had now set the stage for trouble neither side could easily leave. Within the academy's grand practice hall, students gathered beneath the ornate ceiling, their murmurs echoing across the vast room. The group had been instructed to meet there, though none understood the purpose. Among them waited Alicia, observing the impressive architecture with quiet interest while awaiting their instructor's arrival. Scenes later, a loud commotion disrupted the steady. Ardo, the blonde-haired small man, burst onward with obvious impatience. His conduct immediately drew notice, and his classmates tried restraining him before things escalated. The disruption spread through the hall, forcing people to step back and whisper among themselves as strain grew. Alicia exhaled, recognizing the known trouble. Every incident involving Ardo somehow entangled her in its aftermath. Concerned about her family's reputation, she quietly hoped the faculty wouldn't take notice. Across the space, Ardo's demeanor hardened. A glint of conviction replaced his earlier recklessness. He uttered Alicia's name under his breath, eyes narrowing as he noticed movement from a rival faction. The Ark household had appeared, their bearings stirring old rivalries and unspoken strain between nobleman lineages. The serious doors swung open, pulling every gaze toward the entrance. A group of distinguished students came into, their steps measured and confident. The abrupt quiet fell over the group as everyone turned toward the newcomers. Their reactions shifted from interest to worry, the strain spreading quickly among them. Even those who tried to stay steady couldn't ignore the disturbing bearing that entered the space. At the center waited Apriyuto, collected yet carrying an aura that drew every gaze. Beside him his partner spoke confidently, reassuring him of their unity and resolve. The people whispered his name in awe, realizing this was the person called across the academy for unmatched capacity and influence. His arrival caused varied reactions. Some watched with respect, people with irritation. While his allies spoke casually, Apriyuto's sharp gaze swept across the hall, assessing every face. His calmness differed the growing strain, marking his command without needing to say a word. The mood thickened when his icy eyes locked on the opposing students. Dread spread quickly among them as he challenged their unspoken hostility. None dared to move, seeing they had provoked someone outside their standing. Within scenes the confrontation ended without a fight. The opposing students bowed their heads, subdued by his bearing solo. Apriyuto turned away, indifferent to their quivering, leaving behind a space filled with quiet recognition of his dominance. The moment Apriyuto came into the hall, the mood shifted entirely. Conversation stopped, and every student stopped under the abrupt weight. Even those who hadn't met him before instinctively understood his command. His mere bearing silenced the strain that had been brewing scenes earlier. Across the space, Ardo's temper flared formally more. Despite his classmates' efforts to restrain him, irritation forced him to react. His impulsiveness clashed with the disciplined environment, and the people struggled to contain him before the circumstance escalated again. Apriyuto, unaffected by the chaos, watched the place with icy detachment. His partner beside him commented gently, acknowledging the few who managed to stay collected. Apriyuto's steady demeanor carried quiet dominance, revealing he had no need to prove his resolve through action. As strain grew, a ordering voice interrupted the dispute. All eyes turned toward a man standing at the front of the hall. His confident tone carried command, instantly redirecting the students' notice and restoring order within seconds. He identified himself as Teach Tote, the instructor assigned to Rank A. His steady smile differed the lingering worry in the space. With his arrival, the chaotic initial encounter finally settled, marking the true beginning of the academy's new term. Teach Tote started addressing the rank with steady command. He recalled the students to observe proper manners, cautioned them against staring at people out of interest. His collected bearing commanded notice, pivotal a restless crowd into a disciplined audience. After a short pause, he smiled faintly, proposing something unexpected. Since the students seemed eager to measure one another's abilities, he indicated they test themselves directly. The grand hall, built for practice, was the perfect setting for a demonstration of resolve. The instructor's idea quickly captured everyone's focus. Excitement and anxious power filled the air as he described that a mock battle would work as both practice and introduction. It was a chance to learn through combat, not words. Teach Tote looked over the gathered students, hand resting thoughtfully on his chin. He scanned each face carefully before deciding who would represent the rank in the initial match. His confident demeanor implied that his decision would not be random. Finally, he called two names, Ardo and Ark. The announcement shocked the space. Both small men turned toward each other, eyes meeting in quiet challenge, while their classmates watched with anticipation of the impending clash. He announced the start of the mock battle, choosing Ardo and Ark as the initial participants. His steady tone drew instant surprise from the students, and whispers spread across the hall. Even the picked pair seemed took off guard by the abrupt verdict. Alicia, standing nearby, tried to warn Ardo against moving recklessly. Before she could finish, he vanished from her sight in an instant. Uncertainty rippled through the group as they realized he had moved without a trace, leaving his peers momentarily speechless. Alicia blinked, searching the area where he formerly waited. Her friend smiled awkwardly, unclear how to react to the abrupt disappearance. When Arto reappeared a few steps ahead, his confident posture exposed that he was set for the confrontation. Across the arena, Ark waited patiently while Tote called for both fighters to take their positions. The mood grew quiet as everyone anticipated what was about to unfold between the two most talked-about students. Confronting each other at last, both opponents prepared for the match. Arto identified himself properly, radiating conviction, while Ark answered briefly, his sharp gaze steady. Their standoff marked the true beginning of the class's initial battle. The battle started with strain filling the practice hall. Arto studied Ark cautiously, feeling a disturbing disconnect. It seemed as though his opponent wasn't even acknowledging him. Determined to take command, he announced his intent to end things quickly, masking worry behind certainty. Standing firm, he lifted his voice with resolve. His challenge came with a demand that Ark desert his supposed wrongdoing if defeated. Conviction glowed in his eyes as he tried to give the fight a purpose outside competition. He went on to accuse Ark of grave misconduct, claiming ties between his household and a criminal organization. The accusation shocked the spectators, leaving an awkward quiet across the space. For a moment, even Arto's composure faltered under his own eruption. Ark looked on, visibly confused by the claims being thrown at him. His demeanor shifted between disbelief and irritation as Arto's intensity grew. The entire place turned chaotic as the duel became less about skill and more about accusation. Despite the uncertainty, Arto pressed on, his irritation evident. He couldn't remain Ark's steady bearing or the certainty in his gaze. Without hesitation, he tightened his fists, set to strike, intent on proving his resolve through sheer power. Arto lunged onward with explosive speed, unleashing his skill with no delay. A blinding surge of power accompanied his war cry as he ended the distance. Across from him, Apriyuto continued still, unfazed by the charge. Instructors and students immediately reacted. One teacher lifted his hand to intervene, while another yelled in irritation. They hadn't given permission to start. Accusations had already awakened strain, and now Arto's abrupt move escalated the circumstance further. Despite warnings, he forced ahead, ignoring both command and rules. Without slowing down, Arto delivered a forceful blow to the nearest teacher who waited in his way. The man was launched backward by the impact. Arto's face was filled with rage. His focus stayed locked on Apriyuto. Anything obstructing his route, even an instructor, was treated as an enemy. Charging his next attack, Arto yelled the name of his skill. Power swelled around his body. The move was designed to target only the wicked and attack of righteous judgment. The impact landed with devastating power. A burst of light swallowed the area. Dust and debris exploded outward, leaving only quiet in its wake. Arto continued standing, watching the result of his judgment unfold. Arto waited confidently amid the smoke, declaring the power of his power. He stated it was a divine magic meant only for the wicked, a power none could survive. In his eyes, the outcome was already decided. Movement behind the haze proved him wrong. A person appeared, unfazed, brushing off dust from his jacket. Blood trickled from his mouth, but his steps continued steady. Apriyuto's voice cut through the strain with a steady remark. What Arto called justice sounded no distinct from tyranny. Gasps erupted from nearby students. Their eyes widened as Apriyuto reappeared, standing firm despite the blast. One by one, voices cried out in disbelief. They couldn't comprehend how anyone could oppose such power. For the initial time, Arto's composure started to waver. Accusations quickly trailed. Several classmates pointed fingers at Arto, furious over his earlier deeds. Attacking a teacher and launching a preemptive strike made him not anymore a hero in their eyes. Rage spread fast, and the group started advancing to confront him. Apriyuto walked onward and lifted his voice. He told them to stay back. Surrounding someone solo wasn't just. This was his battle to settle, and he wouldn't allow interference. Rage swelled through Arto's voice as he screamed at Apriyuto. Rage distorted his demeanor, overcome by the realization that his grand magic had failed to take victory. The disgrace cut close. For him, this was more than a battle, it was a challenge to his command. Arto reached his arm, channeling power into a glowing weapon. Though frustrated, he acknowledged Apriyuto's resilience. Plainly, the earlier attack had not landed as foreseen. Despite this, he planned to continue, unwilling to accept a draw or retreat. Without waiting more, Arto launched a new magic. Light gathered around him before he lifted his hands overhead. His next move, the Holy Lance, formed in the air, sharp, radiant, and aimed with intent to finish what he had started. But Apriyuto had already moved. Speed and awareness kept him ahead of the magic. His eyes narrowed, and his body leaned onward, notable decisively before Arto could react. A single blow interrupted the casting. The impact landed squarely in Arto's chest, sending shockwaves through his body. Cracks formed behind him as his body slammed into the wall. In that moment, the benefit shifted. The crowd watching now saw plainly Apriyuto had assumed command of the fight. Apriyuto delivered a crushing strike to Arto's face, sending him crashing into the rubble. Blood sprayed across the air, marking the blow's impact. Calmly, Apriyuto adjusted his collar and looked down. The fight in his eyes had ended. His voice carried no feeling, only judgment. Arto, however, started to laugh. His body rattled, but his eyes stayed wide with rage. Slowly he waded back up, face bloodied and lips twisted into a grin. What had just occurred hadn't fazed him. Instead, he stated it didn't hurt at all. Refusing to stay down, Arto forced himself up from the smashed ground. Breathing heavily, he yelled his anger. He blamed Apriyuto's lineage for the suffering of the nation. In his head, the Arc clan represented all that was wrong. He refused defeat. Driven by a frantic sense of task, Arto pressed onward. He clutched his chest, muttering his will as a self-proclaimed hero. Names and faces flashed in his head. His legs moved faster, propelled by his rage and purpose. His cry tore through the air, but before he could close the gap, Apriyuto reappeared behind him. In an instant, dark power swelled. Arto's body tensed as the power gripped him. Arto's body collapsed onward, blood spilling from his mouth. His limbs gave out as the attack's toll finally took effect. From the sidelines, a girl cried out his name in alarm. Her voice broke through the chaos, filled with alarm and dread. Gritting his teeth, Arto lifted his face from the ground. Bruised and bloodied, he forced out bitter words. The blow had rattled him, but not enough to crush his will. Crawling slowly, he cursed his flaw not with shame, but with irritation. Apriyuto walked away calmly, his back turned, his words cut hidden than any magic. He dismissed Arto's will as hollow. Despite the firm speeches and declarations, he saw only a child misusing a hero's name. Anger swelled through Arto as he forced himself straight again. He yelled back, furious and frantic. Apriyuto's words pierced honor, but not belief. The struggle wasn't just for acknowledgement, it was for justice. He couldn't let those words remain unanswered. Eyes locked on Apriyuto, Arto announced his intent. Rage filled his voice as he called him a fiend. No matter the cost, he swore to defeat him. He would save the girl. That was his only focus now. Apriyuto waited still as dark power swirled around him. His voice broke the quiet, steady, resolute. He acknowledged the fact with no delay. Yes, he was an evildoer. Not just any evildoer, but the most dangerous one the nation had ever called. With finality in his tone, he turned his back. Arto's remain meant little now. The duel was finished. As his person faded into the darkness, he muttered an icy farewell to the so-called champion of justice. Elsewhere, quiet had fallen. The girl who had cried out earlier now lay unconscious in someone's hands. Her demeanor was quiet, untouched by the battle's chaos. Nearby, a wounded instructor lay motionless on the tiles. One student quietly watched it all, lips parted but words withheld. Arto lay on the ground, blood pooling beneath him. His body didn't move. His face, formerly driven by anger and resolve, now showed nothing but stillness. The cost of his objection had finally took up with him. Standing over the fallen boy, Apriyuto looked down. Behind him, students stared without speaking. His ideas lingered. Was killing him really a move of salvation? His expression continued unreadable as the space remained between dread, awe, and silence. Apriyuto's eyes held no triumph, only assurance. He confessed the futility of his own defeat. Even if he died here, another would rise. Evil, in his view, was unending, simply reshaped through new vessels. From behind, a voice pierced the quiet. Several students hurried onward, calling out with worry. Their reactions betrayed a mix of dread and loyalty as they turned to their leader, awaiting direction. Without pause, Apriyuto snapped into control. His commands were plain and precise. Oriana was told to ensure the hero didn't leave. Mist was instructed to bind him firmly. Another was tasked with informing the teachers and rallying their bearing. The students answered in unison, energized and united. No delay marked their faces. For them, Apriyuto's commands were absolute. With conviction, they moved to bear out his planning without delay. Meanwhile, a girl walked onward from the crowd, tears glinting in her eyes. She volunteered to handle the healing, her voice filled with pressure, her gaze locked onto the fallen, showing hope amid the chaos. Amid the grand hall, Absolute approached with a measured gaze. Eliza calmly focused on her spellwork. Quiet hung serious as strain simmered between them. Accusation came swiftly. He linked her to the hero's destructive rampage with no delay. Feigning innocence, she provided only smiles in return. Her words denied any wrongdoing, while her eyes continued unreadable. People looked on, unclear whether to faith her calm bearing or question the truth beneath her mask. Suspicion had been planted. Within a grand hall, Alicia waited locked, overwhelmed by the fact she couldn't ignore any longer. The ornate ceiling and looming staircase verified her mistrust. This was not a passing dream. Everything about the spot sensed too vivid, too structured to be an illusion. A sigh avoided her lips as reality fully sank in. Another student approached with worry, asking if she was all right. Alicia quickly collected herself, showing a steady smile in response. Though her demeanor was bright, her ideas continued stormy. She knew the circumstance demanded composure, yet her chest still carried the weight of worry from what had transpired earlier. In a quiet hallway, the girl with the braided hair reflected on the earlier scandal. A commoner named Alto had moved out against a nobleman, and move considered outrageous even if the offender was a hero. His public challenge to the Marquis clan was both firm and dangerous, violating every expectation of state and decorum. Resolute to restore dignity, Alicia hurried down the hallway. She believed an apology was necessary not just for the morning's chaos, but for the mistreatment of people, including a maid. As she reached the doorway, her eyes locked onto Apriyuto. The moment had arrived to confront him directly. From behind a pillar, Alicia continued secret, her eyes set on the group ahead. The conversation among Apriyuto and two girls had shifted, and a single word waited out: Saint. Her interest deepened as she tried to make sense of what the title implied within their context. Although Alicia strained to hear, the dialogue continued muffled. She could barely catch fragments. Apriyuto's tone sharpened as he accused the girl of manipulating the hero. The response, relaxed and dismissive, only made the circumstance feel more suspicious. The mention of the hero jolted Alicia with alarm. Her knees weakened beneath her, and she instinctively fell to the tiles in alarm. That name wasn't something she foreseen to hear so casually tossed about in this context. Every part of her now demanded to understand what was happening. Wide-eyed, Alicia processed the implications. Apriyuto and the mysterious saint appeared to be discussing Alto. Alarm swirled in her chest. This wasn't some idle chat, this was about someone she knew, someone involved in today's chaos. Sliding more behind the wall, she bit her lip. Ideas raced. Was a scheme forming to remove Alto and the Mirai house? Incidents were spiraling outside her command. An abrupt noise betrayed Alicia's bearing. She stopped, then let out a shocked gasp as Apriyuto and another student turned to look in her direction. Her eyes widened in horror as their gazes landed directly on her crouched person behind the corner. His demeanor continued unreadable. The sharp glint in his eyes made Alicia's stomach change. Alarm swelled through her as she recognized the gravity of being took. Without uttering a word, Apriyuto turned away. He provided no response, no recognition, and certainly no warmth. Alicia tried to talk, but her voice faltered. Her courage withered under his indifferent glance, and before she could gather her ideas, he had already walked past. Left behind in the hallway, Alicia quivered from more than just the icy breeze. The quiet after his departure stung hidden than any accusation. She fell to her knees, frustrated. Even an apology had been denied, no chance to explain or make amends. Later, claims spread across the dining hall. Chris, a blonde-haired boy, blurted out the shocking news. Apriyuto had allegedly beaten the hero during a mere recreational match. Gasps trailed. Alicia waited nearby, shocked by how quickly everything had spiraled outside her command. Around the academy, News of Apriyuto's fight remained to spread. A girl with twin drills passionately described how he had defeated the hero using nothing but his fists. Oriana, standing nearby, struggled to remain collected as her classmate gushed about the display, overcome by respect and exaggeration alike. Students who hadn't witnessed the event directly were filled with envy. One exhaled heavily, burying his face in his hands, lamenting his absence from the spectacle. Another tried to cheer him up, suggesting they aimed to join the same rank next year. Back in the dining hall, a maid whispered discreetly to Apriyuto. Alicia had properly sought an audience to apologize. With no delay, Apriyuto refused. He instructed the staff to relay his intent to address the matter through a confirmed objection to the Mirai household. An explanation would be demanded in due time. Irritation built as more reports reached him. Uru, a maid under their support, had also been harassed that morning. As he listened, a dark thought elapsed through Apriyuto's head. His patience with the so-called hero was wearing thin. While his demeanor continued steady, his worry was real. He considered inviting Uru to their normal cafe, hoping support might range her outside words. With a collected smile, Maria agreed to deliver the message. She acknowledged the verdict to delay Alicia's audience and verified she would inform her accordingly. Though her tone continued professional, a trace of empathy remained behind her steady bearing. Later, within a charming cafe, Wool clutched a dessert with gleaming eyes, overflowing with gratitude. She beamed as she thanked Apriyuto for bringing them there again. Maria, sitting beside her, provided a restrained nod of appreciation, visibly more relaxed than before. From his seat across the table, Apriyuto watched their reactions without speaking. Despite their cheerfulness, he continued modest and direct. With a relaxed motion, he encouraged them to stop thanking him and simply enjoy the sweets that had been prepared. The initial bite took him by surprise. The Mont Blanc, soft and rich, exceeded his expectations. A burst of flavor made him pause, his stoic demeanor momentarily breaking with genuine delight. Apriyuto hadn't foreseen to be moved by something so trivial. As he chewed thoughtfully, a realization crept in. Perhaps his fondness for Mont Blanc came from the initial version of Absolute, the character he'd formerly read about. He smiled faintly, accepting that even the smallest pleasures could tie stories and lives together. With a collected smile, Maria agreed to deliver the message. She acknowledged the verdict to delay Alicia's audience and verified she would inform her accordingly. Though her tone continued professional, a trace of empathy remained behind her steady bearing. Later, within a charming cafe, Wool clutched a dessert with gleaming eyes. Overflowing with gratitude, she beamed as she thanked Apriyuto for bringing them there again. Maria, sitting beside her, provided a restrained nod of appreciation, visibly more relaxed than before. From his seat across the table, Apriyuto watched their reactions without speaking. Despite their cheerfulness, he continued modest and direct. With a relaxed motion, he encouraged them to stop thanking him and simply enjoy the sweets that had been prepared. The initial bite took him by surprise. The Mont Blanc, soft and rich, exceeded his expectations. A burst of flavor made him pause, his stoic demeanor momentarily breaking with genuine delight. Apriyuto hadn't foreseen to be moved by something so trivial. As he chewed thoughtfully, a realization crept in. Perhaps his fondness for Mont Blanc came from the initial version of Absolute, the character he'd formerly read about. He smiled faintly, accepting that even the smallest pleasures could tie stories and lives together. Apriyuto reflected on Wool's report. He noted how many so-called protagonists often missed basic awareness of boundaries. Without the filter of fantasy, they came across as disturbing, even creepy. The incident with the hero had reinforced that observation plainly. Despite the seriousness, Apriyuto maintained his normal intensity. He recalled the servants again that they were empowered to defend themselves when required. His tone demanded accountability, not compassion. Both Wool and Maria answered with certainty, assuring him they understood his expectations. Meanwhile, the conversation shifted behind ended doors to more pressing matters. Standing before a window, Apriyuto listened to a nobleman voice concerns regarding a diplomatic verdict. The Mirai household, central to the dispute, would suffer damage from recent decisions. Apriyuto continued firm. Though the execution of the hero was ended due to royal intervention, alternative measures were already in motion. Since the offender had faced consequences, he believed apologies should be supported by tangible deeds to display sincerity. The nobleman acknowledged Apriyuto's will. He approved the path of action but pressed no pity be shown. In his view, the Mirai family's failure to guide the hero properly had led to the present crisis. Responsibility, he argued, should be met with consequences. Grinning with certainty, Absolute swore to move without pity in the coming negotiation. Standing firm by the window, he confirmed his part as an evildoer, determined, decisive and unapologetic in his intentions. Maria came into the space calmly and announced the Mirai family's arrival. Strain rose as the moment of confrontation neared. Behind her collected bearing, worry remained. Absolute's demeanor continued unchanged, already prepared to deliver justice. No delay clouded his judgment. Everything was now set in motion. In the kingdom of Rhinana, the nobleman rank is split into three primary factions. The royalist faction strengthens its control as Marquis Mirai rises in command after securing Alicia's engagement to the hero. This turn threatens the delicate balance upheld by the neutral faction, while aristocrats grow wary of expanding royal power. From within the Mirai household, a resolute scheme is born. One noblewoman, driven by jealousy or ambition, vows to destroy the connection between Alicia and the hero. Her will is unshaken. Separation is no longer a political tool but a private vendetta covered in loyalty. A formal inquiry begins, led by Akuyaku, the black-haired nobleman moving with strategic clarity. Marquis Mirai and Alicia bow in apology, but Akuyaku levels a sharp accusation. Even without divine involvement, the core issue remains: the Marquis's failure to manage the circumstance properly. Accountability must be addressed outside titles. Akuyaku calmly invites the two to sit, watching their tense reactions nearby. Suspicions arise that Mirai may deflect responsibility onto Alicia, shifting blame to preserve his position. With a diplomatic tone, the Marquis voices sorrow, yet the words ring hollow. People present recognize that no apology can erase the damage done. Akuyaku listens without speaking, weighing coming consequences. Marquis Mirai maintains a collected posture as he claims the hero was confined for safety reasons. Alicia lowers her gaze, saying nothing. The explanation suggests the hero lacks remorse, and his bearing might provoke unnecessary strain. Akuyaku's sharp tone cuts through the pretense. He questions the upbringing and values instilled in the hero under Mirai's support. Title or not, he declares, lawbreakers must face justice without exception, no privileges granted for state. Reacting defensively, Marquis Mirai raises his voice in objection. He denies the accusation that the hero was taught hostility toward the Arc clan. The implication solo rattles him, and Akuyaku's accusation hits a nerve. Attempting to deflect, Mirai insists that Alicia, due to her age proximity, was tasked with guiding the hero. He denies direct involvement in the hero's conduct, claiming innocence in the matter of his education. Abruptly, he turns his rage toward his daughter. Alicia receives the brunt of his eruption as he strikes her without restraint. Akuyaku quietly watches, demeanor darkening. The mask of nobles begins to crack, revealing the cruelty beneath. Alicia forces out an apology, clutching her bruised cheek, her voice quivering with hurt and disgrace. Her father rages, but Akuyaku cuts through the noise with a single, ordering order to be quiet. The space falls into tense stillness. Standing firm, Akuyaku delivers a deadly caution to Marquis Mirai. He questions the Marquis's judgment and declares that any more mockery of justice will not be tolerated. The danger is not empty. Mirai immediately buckles under weight, mumbling apologies. With command, Akuyaku outlines the Arc household's demands. 3 plain conditions are presented: anti-magic stone provisions, financial compensation, and academic suspension for the hero. He emphasizes that these terms are non-negotiable and will be enforced without exception. Mirai recoils in disbelief at the steep penalty. Alicia sits shocked by the last demand, the cancellation of her engagement. Despite the king's prior approval, Akuyaku insists the punishment is merciful. He reminds them that under normal law, execution would be justified. Calmly, Akuyaku clarifies the last point. The engagement may be reinstated, but only if all terms are fulfilled. Until then, the annulment stands. What many would consider rough, he presents as controlled, a judgment warmed solely by royal interference. The royal decree arrived without caution. 2 men sat across from Marquis Mirai, their tone hard. One of them announced the king's summons. Alarm ran through the Marquis and the small woman beside him. He had not anticipated such formal intervention. Alarm overtook him as the weight of the accusation sank in. Standing abruptly, he denied any wrongdoing. His voice cracked with desperation while his quivering hand pointed toward the girl beside him. Alicia, quiet and collected, became the scapegoat without objection. Akuyaku, the black-haired officer, continued unfazed by the eruption. With a piercing gaze, he recalled the Marquis of his title. The Mirai household could not distance itself from the failure. His issue cut through the space, exposing the core of the problem without need for explanation. Responsibility, Akuyaku stated, lay squarely with the Marquis. Attempts to turn blame toward Alicia held no ground. The task of guiding the hero had always been the Marquis's task. Alicia's widened eyes showed dread, but no objection avoided her lips. The Marquis waited, locked under judgment. Quiet trailed. Ultimately, Akuyaku addressed his father, requesting the instant execution of the transfer. The Marquis could only remain speechless, as Alicia was softly escorted away.
Alicia sat softly, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Strain remained in the space, serious and unspoken. From behind her, Apriyuto voiced the conclusion. The negotiation had ended, and every verdict had been made on their terms. With a collected tone, Apriyuto outlined the last steps. The royal clan would formalize the agreement through confirmed documentation.
Certified notices bearing signatures would soon follow, sealing the matter permanently. No part of the sequence would be left doubtful. Consequences were made plain. The least punishment awaiting the Mirai household would be the Marquis' removal from his position as its head. His deeds had triggered a chain of judgment that no control or denial could reverse. Overcome by guilt, Alicia approved responsibility. Her voice quivered as she confessed her shortcomings. She blamed herself for not being reliable, and believed her failings had led to the entire struggle. The weight of people's deeds bore down on her own conscience. Memories resurfaced, accusations, harassment, and violence. Alto had moved out of resentment toward the Arc clan. His deeds stemmed from past grudges, calling her a criminal, threatening her maid, and even assaulting a teacher. Each move painted a clearer picture of the root cause behind the chaos. Alicia's feelings finally erupted. Tears streamed down her face as she questioned the injustice placed upon her. Her hand tightened Apriyuto's sleeve as she cried out, requiring to know why she was always the one burdened with the blame. Her voice wavered as she remained. Every action Alto took somehow became her fault. She couldn't understand why she was always took in the middle, even when she had done nothing wrong. In the bearing of Apriyuto's quiet, her despair deepened. Pivotal away, she covered her face with quivering hands. The irritation, guilt, and weight weighed too heavily. It wasn't just the political strain or clan obligations, it was the feeling of helplessness in the face of power she could never command. Her resolve finally gave out. Alicia confessed that everything had become too crushing. She couldn't bear it all anymore. The dread of disappointing people, of being the root of struggle, had built up outside what she could contain. Sorrow filled her words as she apologized. She realized she had been focused on her own suffering, forgetting who the true victim was. With humility she bowed her head, acknowledging the hurt she might have caused Apriyuto in return. Tears remained to fall from Alicia's eyes, but her breath took when Apriyuto reached out. Softly he held her quivering hands, catching her completely off guard with his steady and deliberate action. A glow started to emanate from their joined hands. Alicia gasped, realization dawning in her widened eyes. It was healing power, not the kind that healed scars, but one that soothed emotive strain. Her breath slowed as the warmth settled in. With quiet assurance, Apriyuto spoke her full name. Alicia looked up, still keeping his hand. His bearing was steady, anchoring her amidst the chaos of her spiraling guilt. No accusation continued in his voice, only clarity and resolve. He plainly made called. Alicia bore no fault for what had happened. Responsibility belonged elsewhere, with the hero who lost command, her neglectful clan, and even himself. He included his own name among those who had failed her. Alicia's eyes widened again. She rattled her head in disbelief, her voice breaking as she argued he had done nothing wrong. Feeling overcame her again, but this time it was from the unexpected support of being defended. For formally, someone truly waited by her. Alicia gripped Apriyuto's hand tightly as she exclaimed he was wrong. Her voice quivered, but her words were firm. He wasn't the one to blame. He had shielded her, not injured her. Yet Apriyuto disagreed. He believed that his own flaw permitted the hero's recklessness to spiral unchecked. If he had shown crushing power, things might never have escalated. This moment, he said, was precisely why Alicia mattered. Standing in front of her, he met her gaze with resolute honesty. Apriyuto confessed she had every right to resent him. If she chose to direct her anger toward him, he would accept it without objection. His intentions were plain. He asked her to spot all the blame on him so she could find calm. Alicia, overcome by his words, could barely answer. She struggled to understand how someone so steady could bear such guilt so willingly. Apriyuto confessed that his reputation as an evildoer was already set in this kingdom. One more person's resentment wouldn't make a difference. If assuming her emotional weight could help ease her hurt, then it was a part he would take gladly, without hesitation or sorrow. Alicia smiled gently, her hands softly clasped. She thanked Apriyuto for his offer, but declined. Though grateful, she couldn't accept him taking the weight of her hurt. Not anymore. With renewed clarity, she laughed gently, admitting her earlier anger had been misplaced. Bottling everything up had only worsened things. She expressed respect, finally awareness why so many nobles chose to follow Apriyuto loyally. His resolve was in how he carried people. Their dynamic had shifted. Alicia teased him for being kinder than foreseen. Apriyuto, took off guard, denied the accusation, rattled. He couldn't believe she would think him a good person. Meanwhile she hummed contentedly, finally at calm with herself and her choices. Suddenly Apriyuto addressed her directly. His tone was serious again. He asked if Alicia would become one of his own, a firm and unexpected proposal. The room's mood shifted formally more, filled now with anticipation rather than sorrow. Shocked, Alicia stopped. Her cheeks flushed and her head struggled to catch up with what he meant. Uncertainty overtook her normal composure. Her mouth hung faintly open as she echoed the issue aloud, unclear whether she heard him right. Alicia waited locked, her words faltering. She nervously asked for clarification, unclear if she had misunderstood. Her chest raced, trying to sequence the weight behind Apriyuto's unexpected proposal. He made himself completely plain. He asked her to step down as head of the Mirai household and join his side. If possible, he added, it would be most convenient if it were through an engagement spoken with direct, unapologetic seriousness. Extending his hand, he looked her straight in the eyes. Alicia quivered as she stared up at him, overcome with feeling. His steady voice called her name, showing a new route, one away from guilt and uncertainty. Meanwhile, at a quiet manner, a new chapter was unfolding. Someone addressed Alto from within the house, hinting at unresolved matters yet to come. The narrative was already moving onward elsewhere. Within the manor, a nobleman girl calmly faced Alto across a table. Their engagement was formally annulled. In addition to the breakup, he was ordered to pay massive reparations and would be suspended from the academy. With her collected tone, she asked if he had anything to say. The balance of power had plainly shifted. Ardo dropped his gaze, fingers tightened against his knees as guilt weighed serious on his chest. The apology he provided to Alicia carried more than just words, it reflected sorrow born from uncertainty, a time when he had lost himself completely. Memories of that moment flooded his head, his body swelled with power, unnaturally light and sharp. Though his ideas were clouded, a strange exhilaration coursed through him. He remembered the way his chest raced, how the battlefield around him blurred as if it welcomed the chaos he created. Formerly collected, Ardo struggled to explain the abrupt madness. Alicia's mistrust pierced hidden than planned, but he denied her implication. He hadn't relied on any substances, his own decisions had driven his conduct. Though he yelled with resolve, his voice still quivered with shame. Pacing with irritation, he attempted to justify his recklessness. The confrontation with Absolute had come too soon, too impulsively. He tried to rationalize it all, suggesting perhaps Absolute had orchestrated something behind the events, some secret manipulation that forced events onward. Unmoved, Alicia continued sitting, her words sharp and last. She acknowledged Absolute's ruthlessness, yet honored his sincerity. Unlike Arto, she saw integrity in the enemy's convictions. Her voice rang out, fierce and resolute. Alicia's eyes flared with passion as she defended Absolute, unwilling to let any more words stain his name. Every ounce of restraint had left her. She would not accept any more blame cast in his direction. Faced with her intensity, Arto's demeanor faltered. Suspicion crept into his ideas as he tried to justify his deeds. He argued that someone had to intervene, claiming the Ark household's cruelty demanded a rapid and direct response. Alicia, however, countered with steady clarity. Power, she recalled him, was not his solo to wield at will. If the Ark clan was truly guilty, it was the task of the kingdom to deliver justice. He had assumed matters too far and hurt innocent people along the way. Without raising her voice, she issued a decree. Ardo would not anymore remain within the safety of the manor. From that day onward, he would travel as an adventurer, his resolve now belonging to the nation, not to himself. Her last words carried weight he could not deny. Redemption, she told him, would not come through apologies. Only through work, responsibility and shift could he begin to atone. Ardo's voice quivered as he provided a last apology. Before he could say more, Alicia ended the exchange. Her tone was icy but firm, cutting off the moment with quiet finality. With her back turned, she asked him to leave. Left solo, Alicia's composure wavered. A sigh avoided her lips as she whispered a parting wish. Though the words were simple, they carried the weight of goodbye. After a short pause, she extended her hands and shook off lingering strain. Memories of Ardo appeared, years of complicated feelings. He was never cruel, but his bearing had been burdensome. For her, the separation was not painful, but freeing. Resolute to move onward, Alicia shifted her notice. Ardo's coming now belonged to the royal court. Whatever mistakes he might make as an adventurer, she would not anymore bear the consequences. Her tasks lay elsewhere, and she approved that with clarity. When asked to desert her domain, Alicia declined with no delay. Despite painful memories linked to her clan, she could not turn away. The Mirai name still meant something. As a nobleman, she had a responsibility to protect her people, even if the past continued stained. Alicia spoke with resolve, refusing to desert those who relied on her. Her sense of task outweighed private desires. Pivotal away from her people for a moment of happiness sensed like treachery. Soft feeling filled her chest as she remembered someone's offer to bear the blame. Such warmth touched her, yet close down she knew she couldn't turn the weight so easily. A faint smile showed gratitude, not yielding. Standing by the window, she softly reflected on what could have been. Perhaps accepting the proposal would have brought ease. Despite that, uncertainty still remained. Suspicion didn't shake her will, but it did leave a faint trace of sorrow, only a little. Under the pale moonlight, serious footsteps lingered across the dirt. A covered person approached a defeated nobleman, bloodied and quivering on the ground. The man could barely raise his voice as he cursed the stranger towering before him. A rapid, decisive strike silenced his last breath without delay. Scenes later, the lifeless body lay motionless beneath the assassin's blade. Blood pooled beneath the corpse, seeping into the ground. The covered man waited motionless, eyes set on his work, sword embedded close in the chest. Across a ruined battlefield, smashed armor scattered the ground. The masked killer vanished into the swirling black power as the blade slipped from his hand. A single issue remained in his ideas, buried beneath blood and hurt. What purpose had all this served? Raindrops fell, tracing down his blood-smeared face. He tilted his head toward the sky, demeanor unreadable. Neither joy nor sorrow appeared, only quiet. Trees swayed behind him as lightning illuminated the steel still gripped in his hand. Aprayuto awoke abruptly in his ornate bed, sweat dampening his brow. The dream again of the absolute, of blood, of fate. Rubbing his temple, he stared blankly ahead. These visions left a known nausea behind. Aprayuto stared out the window, torn between the world he remembered and the one he now lived in. Retaining memories of a past life made this reality feel more external than known. Down a quiet hallway, another student approached with resentment in his voice. Aprayuto's choices had not gone unnoticed. The route he had assumed, lined with corpses and hard decisions, drew scrutiny from those who still believed in moral lines. Later, a maid's kind words took him off guard. Her soft voice tried to label him something he refused to be. Aprayuto did not reply with warmth. Instead, he approved a colder fact. Regardless of intent or belief, the stains on his hands would never wash away. Solo before a painting of a former warrior, he reflected without speaking. Commands from the state did not absolve guilt. Even when the cause was nobleman, killing continued what it was and move of evil. He sensed no honor in his accomplishments, only resignation. With firm steps, Aprayuto walked onward formally more, not any more seeking redemption. He hugged the part forced upon him. Evil defined his name now, not because he enjoyed it but because he believed no one else should bear the weight. The academy's towering architecture hung ahead as students returned to campus. For Alicia, this marked her initial time back since the chaos caused by Alto. Anxious power bubbled beneath her bright smile. Crossing the entrance, Alicia was met with warm voices and wide eyes. Known classmates welcomed her with open hands, calling her name with sincere relief. As she walked further within, she tried to match their enthusiasm despite the worry lingering beneath her steady facade. Their worry was genuine. Questions about her condition appeared instantly, accompanied by excited chatter. Surrounded by kind faces and genuine smiles, Alicia's discomfort started to fade. Though the memories still weighed on her, their welcome grounded her in the present moment. Her voice steadied as she assured them she was fine. Relief washed over the group. Laughter returned to the hallway, filling the room with a sense of normalcy. Glancing toward the window, Alicia took sight of someone she hadn't foreseen. Her eyes briefly widened in surprise. Absolute had arrived. His sharp gaze met hers across the space. Alicia wavered, her earlier certainty faltering. Questions filled her head, unclear of how to method the boy who once terrified her, and yet now drew her interest. Alicia wavered, eyes set on Absolute. Her ideas raced as nervousness twisted in her chest. Despite everything that had happened, she couldn't simply ignore him. Mustering her courage, she decided a simple greeting would be enough to break the quiet. Before she could move, another student beat her to it bravely, calling out to Absolute with bright certainty. Alicia stopped mid-step. Standing beside the high person, she watched softly as the unexpected encounter unfolded before her eyes. Christina Zen made an extreme entrance, her voice booming with challenge. As the daughter of Duke Zen and a person of nobleman standing, her confrontational manner was no surprise. However, her familiarity with Absolute left Alicia puzzled and disturbed. Their exchange sparked whispers among the people. Christina, called for icy formality, had used his given name. It was a slight but shocking break from her normal tone. Alicia waited aside, questioning how and when their connection had reached such familiarity. Later, the classroom filled with talk of their power duel. While Alicia had been absent, Absolute and Christina had been pulling notice through their power. Her eyes widened again. These two so unlike each other had somehow become the center of the academy formerly more. Absolute and Christina waited confronting one another again, their rivalry reignited. Both had earned top scores during the academy entrance test, leaving their frequent clashes a common sight. No one doubted their abilities, but their dynamic remained to draw notice. Meanwhile, Alicia listened softly to her classmates. They spoke with surprise about Christina's abrupt interest in Absolute, which apparently started after a previous duel. Alicia nodded slowly, trying to mask the discomfort tightening in her chest. Memories appeared scenes where Alicia had spoken with Absolute, smiled at him, even reached out, but now, that same person addressed her with icy formality. The name Alicia Mirai fell from his lips as if they were strangers. His eyes exposed nothing. Her voice quivered with disbelief as she muttered under her breath. She had assumed their relation was special, only to realize she might have misread it all. Rattled and confused, Alicia struggled to answer, finally blurting out a remark that startled everyone, herself included. Absolute stared blankly, took off guard by her accusation. Around him the other students whispered and chuckled. Some looked away awkwardly. He continued quiet, plainly confused by the circumstance. Whatever Alicia had imagined between them, it was not any more so simple. The morning halls were abuzz with activity, yet Alicia moved through them with grace. Friendly classmates approached her with smiles, one of them handing over neatly compiled notes. She approved them gratefully, touched by their thoughtfulness after her absence. Soon after, she observed a known face she hadn't welcomed yet. Pivotal toward her with a smile, Alicia identified herself properly to the newcomer. Though they hadn't interacted before, she reached a sincere motion of goodwill to Princess Leone. Leone answered kindly, her smile radiant yet collected. An external dignitary, in the guise of a student, she represented the kingdom of Suirok. Despite her state, she treated Alicia as an equal. Their cordial exchange drew approving glances from surrounding students. As they remained speaking, Alicia questioned about Leone's adaptation to life in Rhinana. The princess answered politely, expressing gratitude and certainty in navigating her new surroundings. Alicia, with no delay, promised her backing should any difficulties arise during her stay. Impressed, Leone acknowledged Alicia's reputation. Her words carried weight, yet she spoke them with warmth. Accepting Alicia's offer of help, she smiled sincerely. Alicia's eyes lit up. For the initial time that day, she sensed like she was truly back where she belonged. Surrounded by bright classmates, a blonde girl enjoyed the vibrant mood of school life. Laughter filled the dining hall as she basked in her newfound popularity. With Alto's absence, a sense of freedom bloomed in her chest. Finally, calm reigned in her regular duties, unburdened by the shadow of his bearing. Elsewhere, under the quiet of night, Apriyuto reviewed documents at his table. His concentration broke when a letter arrived, sealed and properly presented by his maid. She described it had come from Villain-sama, which caused a sharp glint to arrive in his eyes. Far from the capital, a remote tavern waited within the flower region. Its location placed it outside the normal patrol routes, secret by thick forest cover. To most, it was a quiet spot, but tonight, it became the center of unwanted notice. Within, the mood buzzed with worry. The space brimmed with rough figures, former agents of the Gileas organization. Among them, one man sat smoking with hardened will. Scarred and bitter, he stared ahead coldly. Vengeance filled his ideas. No matter how long it took, he would not allow himself to fade in obscurity. His plans would begin here in this nation. Earlier, a struggle erupted between dark factions in the kingdom of Suiroku. Gileas, formerly powerful, was ultimately defeated. Its leadership fled the nation, seeking asylum outside enemy borders. With their group shattered, they vanished from the battlefield, their control severely diminished. Refugees of the Gileas group gathered in masking, licking their scars in external lands. Formerly thousands tough, only 50 continued. Their survival hinged on a negotiator who secured them passage into Rhinana Kingdom. Despite this temporary refuge, uncertainty hung over their coming. At a quiet table, the leader voiced a grim scheme. He was considering joining a criminal faction within this nation. An informant stated the Ark household, one of the kingdom's most influential nobleman families, secretly backed this network. Opportunity, though risky, seemed within range. Suddenly, a subordinate burst in with urgent news. Someone claiming to represent the Ark household had arrived. Worried, the leader remembered the missing negotiator and the unresolved agreement. Sorrow flared. Uncertainty turned to strain as the visitor appeared solo. One person, covered and armed, walked through the entrance with composure. Apriyuto had arrived. Behind him the informant quivered. No guards, no entourage, just a single man with bearing tough enough to control the space. Apriyuto faced the frantic group with quiet command. He recognized them immediately, remnants of Gileas, seeking protection. Before he could ask, the leader verified it, kneeling with pressure. They desired backing from the Ark household and provided their loyalty with no delay. Nervously, one of the men pleaded for consideration. Their record in the Suiroku Kingdom proved their abilities. With sweat dripping down his face, he argued they still had value. Anything they had left, they were willing to use to work. A moment of quiet elapsed before they hurried to justify themselves more. One of them yelled that they had a tribute prepared. Perhaps material goods wouldn't sway Apriyuto, but this showing would surely prove their sincerity. Behind metal bars, two afraid small girls clung to each other. The men described coldly that the twins were abducted from a nobleman clan in Suiroku. To them the girls were valuable assets, merchandise, not lives. Strain grew as they remained their pitch. Gileas, they stated, held international connections and expertise in abduction. Their criminal network had range and utility, and they were confident the Ark household would benefit from their activities. But the quiet horror in the twins' eyes indicated otherwise. Apriyuto listened without speaking, demeanor unreadable as he absorbed every word. Certainty spread among the Gileas remnants, misinterpreting his steady as approval. Their leader leaned onward, eager for affirmation, believing his proposal had been approved. Without caution, chaos erupted. Blood spilled as frames hit the tiles. No pity was shown. Eyes wide in horror, the Gileas leader kneeled amid fallen allies, locked in disbelief as Apriyuto delivered the verdict dismissal. Standing firm in the rain, Apriyuto announced their unworthiness. Not a single plea would sway him. Gileas failed to meet Ark household standards, not in resolve nor in purpose. With blade drawn, he upheld his judgment with no delay.
Feathers drifted through the air as an ominous quiet settled over the ruined village. Apriyuto waited still among the scattered frames, his eyes fixed on the person covered in black, sword drawn, radiating a suffocating presence. Blood clung to the man's tunic as he sat against the icy wall, battered but defiant. Sorrow clouded his demeanor as he tried to understand the massacre that had unfolded. Standing across from him, Apriyuto's posture continued rigid. He provided no compassion. The man's explanation meant nothing in the face of treachery. Apologies were useless now. The judgment had already been made, and there was no space left for pity. The wounded man forced a weak smile, trying to provoke something human in Apriyuto. Power had shaped the boy into a power dreaded by all, but even then, emptiness clung to his gaze. Words of envy fell flat as Apriyuto continued unreadable, unshaken by respect or resentment. With eyes sharp and burning, Apriyuto finally answered not with pity, but rage. Uncertainty twisted across his face as feelings he refused to acknowledge swelled forth. A glare trailed, piercing and unforgiving. Whatever demeanor he wore, it betrayed something hidden in power, something even he couldn't fully explain. Shouting erupted again as the man waited, quivering with rage. His voice cracked under irritation. Accusations flew wildly, his anger pivotal into a demand for cruelty. He could not bear the blankness in Apriyuto's eyes devoid of joy, rage, or even hatred. Apriyuto waited quiet. His head wrestled with the words hurled at him. The scent of blood remained, too vivid to ignore. He reflected on the blade he wielded, and the frames left behind. Close down, he dreaded that pleasure in violence would make him something worse than dreaded a monster. Mist, closed in a warm smile, came into the space and pulled down her hood. A bright tone broke the strain. Her demeanor showed no trace of the carnage surrounding them. Despite the grim outcome, she provided appreciation as if they'd just returned from a simple errand. Apriyuto reported with no delay. The man had been the one guiding enemies through the Ark household's defenses. His execution had been rapid and absolute. Mist nodded, mentioning she had dismissed the spy just as instructed. Mistrust awakened in Apriyuto's voice. He guessed the mysterious bearing might be a negotiator. Mist, unfazed, replied knowingly. She foreseen he had encountered their kind before. Behind the mask and hood, the persona of the so-called negotiator continued elusive. Called to associate only with the criminal underworld, his loyalty was tied to coin, not cause. Apriyuto recounted his abilities with a trace of irritation. The negotiator's teleportation skill permitted him to slip through traps and vanish before a strike could land. Few ever saw his face, and even fewer lived to talk of it. Hunting him was a game constantly lost. Tales of his cruelty were not fiction. The negotiator had orchestrated one of the darkest incidents in the initial story, an incident disguised as a practice exercise. Monsters were unleashed in crushing forces, leaving behind a field littered with corpses and sorrow. Among the victims were students belonging to the Ark faction. The consequences were more than physical. They fractured morale and bred dread. Apriyuto knew the attack was meant to send a message not just to destroy, but to demoralize. With rapid command, Apriyuto issued commands. Captured innocents were to be shielded and later brought before the king. The Bruza household would take custody for now. Justice would follow its path, but the enemy behind it all continued at large, slipping formally again into the darkness. Apriyuto softly rested his hand on the heads of the two afraid girls. Their quivering eased faintly under his steady bearing. A moment later, word arrived these children were nobles from the Suiroku Kingdom. This revelation shifted the circumstance entirely. An icy smile crept across his face as he mentioned collecting a viewing fee from the secret observer. Sword in hand, he walked out, his stride full of purpose. Close in the woods, the negotiator continued secret but not unaware. He had watched everything unfold. Recalling on the brutal efficiency of Apriyuto and the Ark household, he realized he'd underestimated them. The peril had always been high, but this time, it may have been too high. Even the money now sensed like a poor excuse. The negotiator grumbled to himself. Transporting entire factions across borders wasn't what he signed up for. The job had turned from smuggling into a political nightmare. He cursed the unreasonable manner of his newest contract. Yet despite his complaints, he grinned beneath the hood. The spectacle he had witnessed was worth every peril, and now, armed with new information, he had something valuable to sell. One swing launched arrived the ill, and Mildern Twinch from even dine. Whistling casually, he turned to leave, trying to move unfazed, though strain now pressed against his chest. What he saw next stopped him icy. The spirit floated onward, radiating bearing and power. Acknowledgement landed. This wasn't just any apparition. It was a high-ranking spirit, the kind rarely seen outside sacred grounds. Stepping cautiously, he questioned its bearing here of all places. Apriyuto, already closing the distance, watched the negotiator's response carefully. His voice was steady. Apriyuto's tone sharpened. He remembered that the Black Fairy leader had also been a spirit user. That coincidence narrowed the possibilities. If this masked person mutual that same relation, then perhaps their goals overlapped or clashed more directly than foreseen. The negotiator stiffened. Eyes widened behind the mask as realization landed. Apriyuto identified himself with deliberate weight. Absolute Arc. Despite the strain, it was their initial face-to-face meeting, yet neither treated it as relaxed. Both knew this encounter could mark the beginning of something far greater or more dangerous than either foreseen. Apriyuto's eyes narrowed as his voice turned icy. He pointed directly at the covered man, accusing him of smuggling in the Gileas forces. His bearing solo was irritating, but the part he served had crossed the line. Apriyuto's tone was not any more diplomatic, it was private. Dread crept into the negotiator's demeanor. Each step Apriyuto took ended the distance between them. Threats lingered with growing intensity. Quiet wasn't serving in his favor, and his attempt to arrive unaffected only worsened the circumstance. He stumbled backward, breath growing unsteady. Sweat ran down his face beneath the mask. His normal certainty evaporated. For the initial time, the negotiator questioned if he would leave alive. The circumstance had spiraled outside command, and there was no one left to shield him. Desperation set in. Muttering to himself, he prepared his leave. Apriyuto hung just steps away. With a pulse of power, the negotiator triggered his teleportation skill, the one technique that had never failed him. He was set to disappear. Something went wrong. His body stayed rooted in spot. Alarm flared as teleport after teleport failed. Across from him, Apriyuto waited steady, unaffected. The negotiator's voice cracked with rage and disbelief. His trump card was useless. Darkness thickened around Apriyuto as he addressed the failed escapee. His bearing grew more crushing, his voice colder. The negotiator, still quivering on his knees, could only stare in horror. Leave was not only impossible, it was an offense. Alarm overtook the hooded man. He couldn't comprehend why his teleportation failed. Apriyuto, as if reading his head, calmly described that a special tool blocked the skill. The artifact was exposed, an intricate mystic orb forged through the kingdom's top mines. It was not a common trinket but a creation designed to counter even the most elusive enemies. Its purpose: neutralize threats that could vanish into thin air. Apriyuto held the artifact tightly, pleased with its effectiveness. He exposed how deliberate everything had been. The man hadn't been spared by luck, he had been manipulated. Apriyuto had permitted him to linger, to ensure there'd be no complications when the time came. Standing inches away, Apriyuto accused him of a hidden plot. It wasn't just the Gilius affair, he intended to unleash monsters during the Royal Academy's outdoor practice. The interrogator's voice turned sharp. Dread returned to the traitor's face, as the weight of his deeds became undeniable. A covered small man stopped, sweat trailing down his face. The details just exposed to him couldn't be coincidence, only a handful of people should have called such classified information. Paranoia crept in, stirring doubts about who he could faith. He stared out over the vast landscape, ideas racing. If someone truly permitted him to move freely, it wasn't negligence, it was a setup. The clash between Gilius and the Black Fairy faction had always been volatile. His part in that struggle, once secret, now sensed exposed. Someone had accounted for everything. Suddenly a shriek ripped from his throat as dread took over. Across the clearing, Apriyuto appeared quietly, his gaze icy and steady. The blonde underestimated how thoroughly his enemies had intended. Their movements, their timing, nothing had been left to chance. Desperation took grip. He ran through the forest, limbs fueled by sheer alarm. Death sensed imminent with every step. The thought echoed endlessly, he didn't want to die. Yet no matter how fast he moved, Apriyuto continued close, pursuing without pressure. Cornered and frantic, the small man yelled in irritation. It became painfully plain Apriyuto wasn't chasing him to slay, at least not yet. With quivering hands, the small man steadied his breath. His legs glowed from fleeing, but there was no leave left. Apriyuto approached slowly, sword at his side, taunting with a steady, cutting remark. There would be no negotiations now, only one route continued. In a last move of desperation, he lunged onward, cloak flaring behind him. Power swelled through his limbs, not from skill but survival instinct. Apriyuto waited unfazed, a quiet step onward, all it took to counter the careless charge. The blow landed before he could react. His body flew backward, limbs flailing before crashing hard into the dirt. Hurt tore through his chest. Gasping for air, he couldn't even shriek, only writhe as everything blurred around him. Apriyuto walked closer, voice icy and sharp, words cut hidden than blades. No wealth could purchase survival, no plea could turn fate. Greed, formerly his weapon, now ensured his downfall. The fact in Apriyuto's tone provided no pity. Far from the forest, in the quiet of Ark household's basement, darkness remained. A stairway spiraled downward, untouched and quiet. Whatever happened above had only just begun. Hidden secrets waited where neither light nor alarm could range. A gloved hand extended tight against skin, precise and controlled. Hidden into the Ark household's basement, the hallway extended endlessly, lined with cracked stone and icy silence. Something sinister awakened in the dark outside. Within a dim space, Apriyuto waited set. His blood-stained apron exposed what words didn't. This wasn't an interrogation room, it was a spot of decisions and consequences. Without feeling, he adjusted his gloves again, prepared for what came next. Tied to a chair and covered in filth, the hooded man twitched awake as icy water splashed his body. Apriyuto watched him without pressure, acknowledging the captive's resilience with relaxed remarks. For a negotiator, the man had endured more than foreseen. A cluttered table gleamed under dim light, tools, vials, and scattered pills. Apriyuto selected a syringe, his voice steady. Compliments came with caution. Objection had its limits. Now, the fact would be extracted by power. The needle pierced skin swiftly, no delay. A sharp gasp avoided the captive, body tensing under the serum's effect. Apriyuto's voice fell to a whisper as he delivered the verdict. There would be no more chances. This was the end of the line. The issue left his lips icy and measured. Who hired you? The captive twitched, drugged and barely conscious, but the reply came in smashed fragments. A single name avoided between gasps. Eliza. Apriyuto's eyes narrowed as the captive, slumped and bleeding, finished the name aloud. Saint Eliza. The statement hovered in the air with unnatural weight. Quiet fell. His hand stopped mid-motion. Visions of the so-called saint flashed through his head. A girl with a kind smile, a beacon of purity and faith to the public. Yet something didn't add up. Instinct rejected the confession instantly. Mistrust overtook surprise. She was only 15, too small, too sheltered. Even with control and state, orchestrating and criminal hit wasn't within her supposed range. The pieces refused to align. Outside, the cathedral waited in quiet grandeur. Its pointed towers pierced the sky with command. Within, beneath the prayer and candlelight, the fact lay buried. The flame flashed in a black room, its warmth deceiving. Answers, it seemed, would not come easily. Behind a soft smile and a saintly veil, then Eliza spoke with no delay. Her voice was kind, but her words verified it. Preparations were complete. The creatures assumed from the captive had been conditioned exactly as intended. A minor group gathered under flickering candlelight. Calmly they reviewed the last steps of their operation. One person verified the next move deployment would occur precisely on the scheduled date. Eliza nodded in approval. Cardinal Nemiria, old yet sharp-eyed, provided formal gratitude for their participation. His words carried weight. This wasn't just a task, but an assault on the Ark faction itself. The church had picked its battlefield. Then Michael Rhinana, charismatic and assured, dismissed the praise. With practiced ease he recalled them of their mutual goals. His bearing wasn't just political, it was private. His ambition reached outside the present scheme. Though deals had been landed in whispers, he required assurance. The contract, still in spot, would secure his route to power. Then Eliza, ever collected, pledged her full backing. Formally the dust settled, she would back Michael's reinstatement as crown prince. The plot was not any more theory, it had become action. Aprayuto pieced everything together at last. The Rhinana Church had orchestrated it from the darkness. Behind smiles and contracts, Eliza and her allies manipulated incidents. Now fully aware of their scheme, Aprayuto quietly prepared for the inevitable confrontation ahead.